I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'd like to welcome everyone tonight to the Planning and Zoning Commission, Peoria's Planning and Zoning Commission. The first item of business tonight is a roll call. Commissioner Strickman is not here. Commissioner Spranker. Here. Commissioner Loper.
Present.
Commissioner Hutchinson.
Here.
And Commissioner Lewis is absent, Commissioner Moore, and I'm Commissioner Golden. I'd like to read the opening statement. This commission is composed of Peoria citizens who have been appointed by the City Council to serve on the commission as a civic responsibility without compensation. Our duty is to study and review planning and zoning issues within the City of Peoria and then forward them on to the City Council. All hearings are conducted in accordance with the rules of procedure, and the Roberts Rules of Order. Each case will be called in the order in which it appears on the agenda unless otherwise announced during the meeting. In the interest of maintaining fair and efficient hearings, the Commission adheres to the following steps. The Chair calls the case, the staff gives a brief report and recommendation, the applicant gives a presentation, opposition and support gives testimony, and they're limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Applicant may give a rebuttal, and commission decision the commission discusses and makes the decision. Anyone wishing to speak tonight must complete a speaker's form and hand it to the planning assistant on my far left. Please be as brief as possible and do not repeat statements already made by others. Anyone wishing to protest the decisions of the Commission's public hearing item must request a second public hearing before the City Council. The request must be submitted in writing to the Planning and Community Development Department within 10 days after the Commission's hearing. All Commission recommendations or public hearing items move forward to the regular City Council meeting. The City Council will then act on the recommendation of the Commission. They may concur with the decision, modify it, or overturn it. We welcome citizens' comments, and as fellow citizens of Peoria, we thank you in advance for your participation. So if anyone would like to speak tonight, please make sure you submit your request forms. The first item of business tonight, of course, is the consent agenda. The consent agenda is for those items that are routine in nature, and tonight we consist of 3 items. 1C is the disposition of absences, discussion and possible action to approve and excuse the absences of Vice Chair Lee Strickman and Commission members Greg Loper and Charles Moore from the June 6, 2013 meeting. 2C are the minutes and possible action to approve the minutes of the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting held on June 6, 2013. A regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission of the City of Peoria was not held on June 20th, July 18th, and August 1st. And the last item is 3C, which is CU 13-0006, Salon Las Brias. Discussion and possible action to approve a request from Margarita Martinez for a conditional use permit to allow for a wedding reception center in an existing building located at 10611 North 83rd Avenue. Is there any discussion on these items? May I have a motion?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I would move the approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you. And could I have a second? Commissioner Spranker?
Madam Chair, I second that motion.
Thank you. Please vote. Thank you. It passes unanimously. We now move to new business. The first item on our agenda is a R4 public hearing is rezoning. It's a Z13-0005. It's for RBF Consulting on behalf of HealthSport Development LLC is requesting to rezone approximately 26.28 acres from AG agricultural zoning to R1-18 single-family residential zoning to allow for the future development of up to 27 family homes. The subject property is located in the southeast corner of 81st Avenue and Happy Valley. I have opened the public hearing. And staff, could I have your presentation?
Chair Gold and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. First, thank you for your time this evening. I may not be a familiar face as of yet, hope to become one. I'm Stacy Bridge Denzak. I'm a planner, relatively new at the Planning Division, but I wanted to thank you for your time this evening. I'm here to present, as you mentioned, application Z13-005, the rezoning request. As you can see, the project location, I know you just previously described it. You can see the major crossroads are Happy Valley Road and 83rd Avenue. So sometimes we refer to this project as east of 83rd Avenue. Actually, the 81st alignment is the direct boundary to the west. Again, we are looking. The applicant is looking to request a rezoning of about 26.25 acres to allow for 27, up to 27 single-family homes. In terms of the site context, sort of what's existing out there right now, you can see that directly to the south, there's some existing residential, both to the south and to the southwest. We have Silvercrest at Treasure Canyon and Calle Lejos Estates. Across Happy Valley Road to the north is approved PCD zoning, planned community development zoning for a residential development called Alora Vita. To the east is Silver Canyon Ranch, vacant but platted, and then to the west of the property is vacant. Features of the site include, as part of the property itself, it's the SRP easement, which is a high power transmission line easement, which is about 230 feet wide. To the east of the property, also included in its boundaries, is Rock Springs Wash, which is a tributary of the New River Drainage Corridor. Again, Happy Valley Road bounds the north. It's a 6-lane divided limited access parkway. And it is a major east-west connection from the I-17 all the way over to the 303 loop. The major north-south connection is 83rd Avenue, which is a 5-lane major arterial. Again, predominant north-south connection available to the property. In terms of land use, the property itself actually includes 2 land uses. It's residential estate, and that SRP easement is included in the park and open space land use category. Residential estate, that land use category allows for 0 to 2 dwelling units per acre, and we typically try to target 1 dwelling unit per acre for those types of properties. Surrounding to the east, south, and to the west, you can see is also residential estate. But across Happy Valley, just north, related to the property we just discussed, Alora Vita, that's residential low, which allows for a little bit higher density. In terms of zoning, the property itself, as you know, is the ag zoning right now, which a lot of times when a property is really annexed into the city initially, it's called our initial zoning, and we kind of have that ag classification, more sort of a holding district, for lack of better words, for when projects then do come forward. You can see to the south and to the southwest is R1-18 zoning for the 2 neighborhoods as described. This is similar to the zoning that the applicant is requesting, and even further to the south is additional R1-18 zoning. Staff believes you sort of see a pattern of development in regards to this type of district. To the east, again, is Silver Canyon, which is our Suburban Ranch 43 district, and even further east of that is our Suburban Ranch 35. Again, that property is platted, but there has been no development to date. And again, to the west is SR 43, the Suburban Ranch, also a vacant property. Excuse me. With respect to the applicant's proposal, as you know, they are looking for the R118 zoning. It's important to note that this zoning district is a correlative district in terms of the residential estate land use. So this is appropriate to move forward in terms of the residential estate and the general plan. The R118 zoning, as it sort of is prescribed, allows for 18,000 square foot minimum lots. The conceptual plan that the applicant has proposed does have that minimum size of 18,000 square feet, and they do go up to 20,300 square feet and a couple extra feet. So the 27 lots at the 26.28 acres, again, goes back to a dwelling unit per acre density of 1.03. I just want to point out as well is that when we hear one dwelling unit per acre, sometimes we think 1 acre lots, but we have to remember that in that calculation we include things such as roadways and open space. With respect to open space, the usable open space meets the criteria of the design guidelines. It's 1.36 acres, and that's predominantly a public trail which will be designed and constructed in the SRP easement. And that trail itself actually connects to a larger trail network that's happening both east of the property and west. There's also 3.6 acres of natural open space, and that really exceeds our requirements. That natural open space can be found along Happy Valley Road in the buffer areas, as well as to the east in the Rock Springs Wash, and some of that, again, that SRP easement corridor. Only the trail itself counts as usable open space. Lastly, what's important to note on this plan is access. The applicant has proposed and worked with the city staff to allow for a full access onto Happy Valley Road. That came in part to some feedback that we had received initially from the residents. There was concern about extending 81st Avenue and potentially increased traffic in that regard. So the city made a concession to allow for a full access onto Happy Valley Roadway. With respect to citizen participation, we sent out the required notification of the application and the notices for the hearing. Residents within 600 feet, as well as HOAs within a mile, were notified. Initially, I did receive 3 calls. They were mostly inquiries about the proposal. However, when we did hold the neighborhood meeting on April 30th, or I should say the applicant held his neighborhood meeting on the 30th, we did have 15 residents attend, and I think there was quite a good dialogue that took place. I've put up what sort of we felt were the major concerns that we heard from the citizens. By no means are these all of the concerns, but I think we felt that these are the ones that we heard and wanted to bring forward to you. Access being one that I had just described. The idea of extending 81st Avenue was not amenable, so we worked to provide that access on Happy Valley Parkway. We heard the issue about lot size. Some people were expecting acre lots, but however, the lot size not only do we believe is compatible with the surrounding properties, particularly to the south, with the area in general, 18,000 square foot lots seem to be fitting. There was a discussion about limiting the story heights on the southern part of the property to only 1 story. However, when we looked around at a lot of the other neighborhoods and the zoning in general in that area, there wasn't that kind of limitation. And lastly, drainage. We did ensure that drainage would be per engineering requirements and maintained or retained on site as developed. With all that said, staff believes, and it's in your staff report as well, that this proposal meets the required findings for a rezoning. And we look to you to provide a recommendation of approval to City Council for this project, subject to the conditions that are also outlined in your staff report. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Anyone on the... Yes.
Madam Chair, So as a concession to the neighbors, there was not access out on 81st Avenue. So instead, we're going to cut into the median on Happy Valley to allow for full left in, left out?
Chair Golden, Commissioner Loper, that is correct. We did decide to do that so that we would not have to push through 81st Avenue all the way up to Happy Valley Road. And there won't be any emergency access as well.
In your opinion, was there significant opposition to the 81st Avenue? You know, I'm not a big fan of these subdivisions with one way in and one way out. Forget that Happy Valley is this beautiful parkway that was just constructed, and we're going to now tear it up. But I, for one, would be in favor of the 81st Avenue access, just purely. Is there not even fire or emergency access up 81st?
Chair Golden, Commissioner Loper, based on the fire review, there is no, it's not required to have that as an emergency access point. I will say when I mentioned that I received the 3 phone calls, that was one of the issues per each phone call that was discussed at length, and so that concession was made then to make the break at Happy Valley Road.
And I guess just to press this further, I mean, 81st Avenue is not a cul-de-sac. It just ends at the north boundary of that subdivision. So at some point in the past, it was contemplated it would go northward, I'm guessing. Correct? Or
Chair Golden, Commissioner Loper, I may refer to Sean Cruz-Weisner to help me answer that.
Yeah, Chairman and Commission member, at this point, it doesn't show up on our circulation plan as a collector road, which normally would assume.
Right, midsection.
Yeah, it sort of has a bit of a feel of that, but it doesn't show up on our circulation plan. So that's why when we looked at this, we looked at the traffic. Again, we had some concerns with the full access onto Happy Valley Road, especially fairly close to the intersection, signal lines intersection of 83rd Avenue. In speaking with the city traffic engineer, Jamal Rahini, who's actually here and he can speak if we want some more input, is that we're allowing this at this point. We don't see it as a potential traffic problem, but the city does reserve the right in the future to restrict this access if it becomes an issue in the future into Happy Valley Road.
yeah. You know, just we build the 6-lane roadway. It's a parkway, high speeds, and then we start putting driveways on it. Just a philosophical difference. But I would be in favor of the 81st Avenue, but I'm alone on that, I think. Thank you.
Any other comments? Yes.
I share Commissioner Loper's concern about the tearing up the parkway. Is there intended to be a traffic signal installed as well?
No, Commission member, there's not. It's just a free access, so median break with a queuing space.
What about a right turn lane?
I believe
look
there
like
is.
that's in there.
Actually, yeah, there will be a right turn lane pocket going westbound.
Okay. Do you have a question? Yes.
On the single entrance from Happy Valley Inn, will there be in the center of Happy Valley Road a deceleration lane or a place where one can stop, either headed east or west, to wait for traffic to pass to enter into the site? And I think Commissioner Loper talked about whether or not there's a right-hand turn, and there would be also a deceleration lane on the south side of Happy Valley Road entering from the west headed east.
At this point, the details of that, I'd actually defer to Jamal, if Mr. Rahini is actually the city's traffic engineer, if you can answer those questions.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. As far as the decel lane requirement on Happy Valley onto this subdivision, we have criteria for that because it's a very low volume generator. It's not technically required for a decel lane. And as far as the median break and are we going to have a merge area for the left turning vehicles out of the development, at this point, we haven't seen the final design, but based on other experiences along Happy Valley Road, as the volumes increase, I think that may be a prudent option to this scenario.
So at this point, what we're saying is that The plan is what the plan is. However, it might be modified depending on traffic flow on down the line. And does the city reserve the right, or is the city going to have to then, if the traffic studies or the actual traffic as it takes place, either in or out from Happy Valley Road through the singular entrance into or in and out of this development, if the developer now doesn't put in those lanes, then it falls on the city's expense to put it in later on?
That is correct. If there are no stipulations at this point, and I don't know if within the planning rules that is an option at this point or not, the city reserves the right to restrict access if it becomes a safety issue, but as far as further modifications to the island, civil work in the future, I'm not quite sure if the planning rules allow that or not at this point.
I'm sorry, sir. Could you identify who you are and
Yes.
your address, please?
Sure. My name is Jamal Rahimi. I'm actually the city traffic engineer.
Oh, okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Any-
can
Yeah,
anybody answer that?
Yeah, Chair Goldman, members of the commission, with the rezone, they are required, and they did submit a preliminary traffic report, and that was reviewed. Keep in mind, there's also a concurrent preliminary plat application that is pending based on the outcome of this case. So with the preliminary plat, they're also required to provide more details in terms of their traffic flow. And so if in that traffic study we find additional items are necessary, we could stipulate that plat to do that.
Thank you.
Okay, that's all. I just have a couple of questions myself. The first question I have for you is, well, actually, let me just say that Commissioner Loper is not alone in being concerned about Happy Valley. And I travel that road every day, and I speed on that road every day. And especially with the church down at the end, that CCV, when they're in session, traffic just seems to be atrocious. So I would have some concern about just one way in and out of that community. The other question I have for you is, how do these lots compare with the lots in the surrounding communities?
Chair Golden, you mean the surrounding community
The-
around
you
the
know,
property in question?
Silvercrest and,
Well, they are comparable to the lots directly to the south. Based on what's existing, they are comparable to the lots directly to the south of them, also to the southeast. So both neighborhoods, the Silvercrest neighborhood and the Calle Lejos neighborhood, they are the same zoning, and I would say they are, by comparison, the same size lots. True to the east, we have Silver Canyon that has been platted for acre lots. So, and then we have the property then to the west, which is vacant. So while it does hold the SR 43 zoning, it's hard to answer at this point. We are looking at across the road with the Alora Vita project, residential neighborhoods that have smaller lots than the R118. So I would say, in our opinion, we do believe, at least in terms of this property, that it is compatible with what's happening south of Happy Valley Road and in general in the area. I think it's important to note, too, is that in a way, this is almost kind of like an infill parcel to a certain degree. So when we talk, and I appreciate your comments about access, it was quite a in-house discussion. It also should be known that it was a request of the applicant as well, and trying to respond to sort of everybody's concerns. It's an interesting little pocket, however, because based on its size and just trying to sort of accommodate everybody's needs.
Okay, fine. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Does the applicant like to speak? Could you identify yourself, please, and give your address?
Sure. Matt Klysico, RBF Consulting, 2929 North Central Avenue, Phoenix, Arizona. I want to just first start off with thanking staff for assisting us through this process, and Stacy did a wonderful job of presenting our case tonight. So we do have a short presentation prepared. You'll find that much of it is redundant to what Stacy presented. So for the sake of time, we'll kind of maybe just do an abbreviated version of that if you'd like. So we can just go ahead and click. So we've already Stacy gave a very thorough review of the project overview, so I don't feel a need to kind of rehash that. This is maybe a little more panned out, if you will, layout of the Peoria general plan. So you see the small area identified in red in the center, showing our site with the residential estate general plan designation and the strip of open space designation that reflects the power line corridor that runs through the southern portion of the property. I think the most important thing about this slide is obviously the residential estate designation. What comes along with that, as Stacy pointed out, is the 0 to 2 dwelling units an acre, but more importantly, the target density of 1 dwelling unit to an acre. And so we're very aware and sensitive to the surrounding development, and for that reason, we wanted to try to adhere to that target density, which is why we came in at essentially a 1 dwelling unit per acre classification with the R118 zoning. So we think we're very consistent with the general plan in that sense. As far as zoning goes, you can see the zoning map here. Stacy, again, did a very thorough job of explaining the surrounding zoning. The commission asked some very effective questions about the existing zoning and lot sizes. The one thing I would point out, again, is the character of the area. We wanted to make sure we maintain that character. We understand that it's large lot residential development, and as you can see in the zoning map, the majority, if almost all of the land located west of Rock Springs Wash is zoned R118. So we wanted to be consistent with that zoning and provide development that is in character with that. And then again, the planned community development to the north of our property, which is approved and zoned for R16, over 4 dwelling units to an acre. So R118 we think is a very appropriate transitional zoning as land uses get more intense north of the project site. And again, as Stacy very thoroughly pointed out, this is an infill development, and we think that an R118 classification is appropriate for that infill character. This is, again, just to show the proposed zoning of R118. This is the project to the north with the R16 designation. So we get to the layout of the project itself. Because of the SRP easement and the Rock Springs Wash, we certainly have a considerable amount of open space, and it almost makes this project kind of an island to itself in the fact that we have a 230-foot buffer from the properties to the south. When we add in the existing setbacks of those residents along with the setback of what this project will include, that's almost practically a football field, 300 feet of separation from residence to residence. So it's a considerable distance. The SRP easement has 2 power lines going through that corridor. And then we have Rock Springs Wash that we're maintaining along the eastern portion of our property and providing trail access to for future development. We understand the concerns about the single access. We worked with staff, as they indicated, to identify and look at Happy Valley Parkway and ensure that there's proper intersection spacing. Such a small development of 27 lots is a very low traffic generator, so our preliminary traffic study showed that it was a safe, acceptable condition to have that full access. We heard loud and clear at the neighborhood meeting that access on 81st Avenue was not desired. We tried to make sure that we responded to those concerns of neighborhood residents. But certainly, we would be flexible and agreeable to work with staff. As indicated through the preliminary plat process, if there was a need to identify a temporary emergency access, we feel that our site layout could potentially facilitate that if there was a need to provide that secondary emergency access point on 81st Avenue. But certainly, we are comfortable with the layout as proposed, and wanted to also point out that we do have 12.89 acres of open space. That's well over the open space requirements in the individual categories of the usable open space and the natural open space is required as listed. The next slide is just a representation of the character of this project. We haven't, obviously at this preliminary stage, we haven't had the opportunity to define specifically what home sites would contain, but this is a representation of the character and caliber of development. We think it's very consistent, if not identical to existing development in the area. We want it to be of high caliber and character, and it has very soft tones and natural elements in keeping with existing development. So to carry that theme through the development, we also have entry features, cluster mailboxes, and material palette that is consistent with that character. And then finally, just in closing, just a couple example photos from the project site showing the existing power line corridor, and then looking from Happy Valley Road south, and you can see some of the existing development there. And as Stacy pointed out, much of that development is already two-story homes. So with that, I'll kind of stop our presentation and open it up to any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Does anyone on the council have questions?
Yes, I do.
Yes, Commissioner Spraker? No.
On? Yes. I think this is to you as well as to staff. We're going to have another review after this one for another development that's going on in the area. And as Chairman Golden talked about, is that there is the church down at the corner. And obviously there's going to be additional development in this area. It's, as you call it, an infill, and it is to that extent now that it's part of the cities. But my question would be, with additional development, and if we don't go on this particular development, because it happens to be first on the schedule, if we don't have a requirement for these deceleration lanes or acceleration lanes, what have you, and then other developments come in, is there not the possibility that additional developers will say, well, look, you didn't require it down the road, why do we have to put it in? And then if there's an accident because somebody misjudges, now if the lanes aren't there, is the city going to be held at fault because it's a public road? So my question is, would the developer be amenable to, based upon what staff's design or the road's design would be, for, I know it's an increase in costs, putting in these various turn lanes so that not the pedestrians, but the traffic, the people driving these cars are at somewhat less risk, whether they're accelerating or decelerating to go into the site, coming out of the site, or just passing the site when someone may be going in or coming out. I'm just concerned about all of that falling back on the city. That's my question.
Certainly. I guess I can't entirely answer to the procession, I guess, of approvals and stipulations, but I can say that we are certainly accepting and expect that as part of the continuation of this process, going through the plat process, we need to submit additional traffic studies in support of this project. And we would fully expect that in the process of preparing those studies and working with staff to meet any of the requirements that those studies would convey. So I don't know that I could be in a position to say that because it's such a low volume, 27 lots. I don't have the preliminary traffic study in front of me, but the low number of trips that are generated by this, I don't know that we would be in a position at this point to indicate placing decel lanes and acceleration lanes prior to kind of completing a further analysis and certainly addressing those items that you had discussed about additional development further outside of the study area. So we are open to discussing it further, if that answers your question.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, Chris.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, maybe I can answer a little bit too. In that, I'm not a traffic engineer, but when we look at the zoning case, we do require, of course, the preliminary traffic analysis, and that looks broadly at trip generation and ingress and egress. But along with the plat, we do require a more refined traffic study. And so that traffic study will identify specific turning movements and restrictions. Typically, the case on these kind of things is there would be a deceleration lane, but we look at those things in more detail as we have a more detailed plat and more detailed traffic study.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I do have a question for you, and that is, we all know that the planning process is an evolving scenario.
Sure.
And I suspect that based on public input, you have made some changes in the plan. Can you just give me an idea of what kind of changes you made?
Certainly. That's a very good question. I appreciate you bringing it up. One of the items that was discussed in our neighborhood meeting, as you're probably very well aware, the corridor, the power line corridor, is identified as a regional trail corridor. So as part of that, there is a preference to have view fencing along that corridor. So our initial plans did show that we would place view fencing in order to kind of place eyes on the corridor, the whole SEPTED notion. But discussing it with neighbors during the neighborhood meeting, it was expressed that they had a much stronger preference because of noise, the potential of noise traveling, that they would prefer to see solid walls. So we did amend the plan to incorporate solid block fencing along the corridor. That was one item that we addressed. We also, it wasn't something that necessarily was an afterthought of the neighborhood meeting, but it was something that we discussed and looked at going into the neighborhood meeting, and that was the layout of the project itself. And the lots, as you can kind of see, although they're not dimensioned on this exhibit, you can see that the lots that are the southernmost lots that face onto the corridor are wider than the lots north. And that was to provide, one, to minimize the number of lots that back onto that corridor, and also to provide larger separation amongst the homes themselves to create larger setbacks. So those are two, I think, examples of how we tried to be sensitive to existing residents.
Great, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Okay, I have a few people who would like to speak. The first person is Richard Rice. Mr. Rice, when you come to the podium, will you please state your name and your address and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Richard Rice. I live at 8014 West Emory Lane in Peoria. I was at the earlier meeting. I can attest to the one recommended change about the view fencing, that pretty much everybody there was against that because of the reasons he identified, the noise, so I appreciate that. Overall, I just think there's a lot of question marks still out there. I think it's maybe premature to go forward. Don't know about the traffic, don't know about the deacceleration lanes. That is a parkway. Not only do you have one way in and out, but the way in and out is on a curve. So with the traffic flow and the directions that they're going, you're going to have people pulling out along a curve there on an area that's already built for bicycle lanes. So you got more in and out traffic and faster cars going, and I guess they're going to be looking for more cars coming out of there, and it just seems like the deacceleration lanes need to be provided, or at least considered. Otherwise, I believe you will end up paying the cost later on when you change that. As well, talk about the character of the neighborhood. The neighborhood directly to the east is 1 acre. It hasn't even started selling. They've barely started building. So you must have fairly recently gone ahead and approved that. It isn't 300 feet away like the neighborhoods to the south are. It touches the neighborhood directly to the east, and they are 1 acre lots per home. I understand when they add in the different extra land and whatnot, it works out to that. But that, of course, that 1 acre per home lot would probably be 1.7 or 1 acres, and so I don't think it's compatible. It's a 300-foot distance that they're reaching out to grab those home lots and say this is compatible. Well, their neighbors right next door that touch them are larger lots, and we would like to see that character stay the same. Additionally, I'm concerned about the 81st Avenue access, the acceleration lanes, and again, I don't know if there's enough information. They talk about the looks of the homes going forward, the looks of the access. Those things haven't been finalized. They weren't finalized at the earlier meeting in April, and I appreciate, like I said, the concession on the view fencing, but there's just too many other areas out there, and I think that the city needs to have more of a final plan so the neighborhoods can be aware of what they're trying to do. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes. Could you, Mr. Rice, could you stay at the podium for a moment? I think we have a question for you.
Sure.
Madam Chair, Mr. Rice, if you could go back to the aerial, please, of the area.
Yeah.
Two questions for you. First one is, what is the wall on the north side of your development adjacent to that power line corridor? Is it a solid block wall?
It's a solid block wall.
Solid block wall?
And incidentally, I did talk to the police department for Peoria. The sergeant I talked to at Head on Property Crime said the one thing about view fencing, it does sometimes allow people visible access to what's in your backyard, and that could encourage a theft issue. So he was amenable to the solid wall. So, but that is a solid wall.
Certainly, and I've heard the opposite argued. The more close-up aerial that you had that showed just the northern part of Silvercrest and
Calilejos?
I was going to ask you to identify where you lived in proximity to the project.
I live in the
maybe you could just verbally tell me.
I live to the neighborhood to the south of where the project's
Are you
proposed.
immediately adjacent to that open space corridor, or
I
are
am
you a couple of houses rows in?
I'm immediately adjacent to the open space,
To the power line corridor?
the power lines.
You back up to it?
I back up to the power lines.
Okay, thank you.
And incidentally, the one row of power lines was put in after the neighborhoods were all constructed. But there are 2 rows. It's not just APS. SRP has power lines down there as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions from anyone?
Fine, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Rice.
Thank you.
Now, I have a number of speakers' request forms where they did not specify if they wanted to talk on this case or the following case. So could I just read your names off, and could you tell me if you'd like to speak on this case or not? Kathy Irwin. The next one. Thank you. Gary.
The next one.
Thank you. The next one. Okay, thank you. Howard Cassette.
Next one.
Thank you. John Luke.
Next one.
Thank you. Richard Thunder.
The next one.
The next one. Thank you, sir. Ryan Denkett.
Next one.
Jeff Hightower.
The next one.
Thank you. I can't read your writing. It's something J. Coffey.
Next one.
Thank you, sir. And J.D. Campbell.
What reason was I'm J.D. Campbell?
Oh, you'd like to speak on the next issue?
Yeah, this one or the next one?
The next one.
The next one. Thank you, sir. Okay. Does the applicant like to make another comment after hearing the conversation?
We would just want to just add one more thing. Again, we're trying to be sensitive to the surrounding development, but also, as Commissioner Loper pointed out, we also feel that given the existing block wall that is along the Silvercrest development, the existing lattice towers and secondary power line, the 230 feet along with the block wall and the setback of our proposed property, that the project will have a very limited effect on the view shed of the surrounding area. So that was another point that I just wanted to clarify, that we're hoping that the separation of the lots in making them wider in that area also kind of relieves that condition and is much more in keeping with the surrounding development. So that would be the only other item we'd like to add. If there's any other questions, we'll be happy to address those.
Thank you. If there are other questions or comments, then I'd like to close the public hearing. I'm now closing the public hearing. Do the commissioners have any questions or comments? Do I have a motion?
Madam Chair?
Mr. Roper?
Before I make a motion, there's a couple of comments. One, this is a beautiful piece of property that I've driven by a number of times over the last dozen years, and I'm sure it will be successful regardless of how the access is dealt with. The homes look beautiful. I think the zoning is very appropriate for the site. People seem to focus on lot sizes, which is really not the issue at all in my mind. It's more the density, and there's significant open space. They're penalized because of that power line corridor along the backside. They shouldn't have to be. So whether it's, frankly, if it was even lots that were half an acre, but it otherwise was about an acre density, the impact would be about the same. I think they've gone above and beyond in trying to work with the neighbors. And, there's an old saying in development and planning in general, no good deed goes unpunished, because I feel like I'm about to undo probably what the developer and the city and the property owners have all come to an understanding on. But that has to deal with the access. There was a diagram, I think the gentleman from RBF put up, that showed the state land piece to the north. That's all going to get developed. And I imagine that the south connection to Happy Valley connects with Silver Canyon Ranch. So we're going to have a full width interchange there, and it'll probably be lighted. And, we built Lake Pleasant Parkway, and then we insist on having traffic signals every 1/8 mile or 1/4 mile. We build these magnificent parkways, then we put all these access points to it. And I'm really torn here, because as somebody who works in the development community and has worked as a home builder in the past, I would love to have left in, left outs. And so I feel for the ability to try to do that. But I try to look at the bigger picture and what's going on with Happy Valley Parkway. And then when I look to the development to the south, Calle Lejos, beautiful development. I go in there to look at the Christmas lights. If whoever is in the audience does that Christmas display, that's amazing. Keep it up. But you're part of a bigger community. And as I sit here looking at this aerial, 81st Avenue, it was designed to go to the north. Calle Lejos, designed to go to the east. It's not an island. You're not cut off from the developments around you. Those are private properties that are ripe for development today. They haven't been the last 5 years. I'm sure the seller of the property is anxious to get this going forward. I think if it's restricted to right in, right out, those 27 lots still go relatively fast. It's going to be a beautiful development. So I'm very much in favor of it. I think the zoning is appropriate for the site. The zoning's good to go forward. It's the devil that's in the details. And if I had support from the commission, I would be in favor of adding stipulations that would require the secondary access from 81st Avenue and limit the Happy Valley access to right in, right out. To the developer, I apologize, hitting you out of left field. To the public that arrived at this, I also apologize. The good thing for me is we're a recommending body. You had another opportunity to fight this battle. But I would be in favor of it, and if there was support, I would also seek additional stipulations on the access. So Let's throw that out there.
I was waiting for a motion.
I'll give you a motion.
Okay,
Madam
thank you.
Chair,
Yes.
I would recommend that we forward to the City Council a recommendation for approval for Z13, excuse me, -0005, subject to the 25 stipulations outlined in the staff report. I'm sorry, is it 25? 25 stipulations outlined in the staff report, with the addition of 2 more stipulations. Number 26, this project shall be developed with 2 points of access. And number 27, that access onto Happy Valley shall be limited to right in, right out.
Okay, thank you. Could I have a
I'd like to
second?
second the motion.
Thank you. Could I have a vote, please? My vote's not showing up. I don't have a vote. Huh? Now I have it. Okay, thank you. Could everyone please vote? Okay. Would everyone please vote again? Thank you. Thank you. It passed unanimously. Thank you. I appreciate those who participated in that process. Thank you very much. Okay, the second item on our agenda tonight is a minor general plan amendment for GPA 12-0005. Michael Curley with Earl Curley and LaGrade on behalf of the Rialto Capital is requesting a minor general plan amendment to change the land use designation from residential estate O-2 DUAC to residential low density 2-5 DU-AC for approximately 163 gross acres located at the southeast corner of 93rd Avenue and Happy Valley Road. I have opened the public hearing, and does the staff have a presentation?
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. As noted, we have 2 cases here that we will be having one presentation for, both case GPA 12-0005 as well as case Z 12-0005. At the end of the presentation, we would have separate recommendations and ask for separate motions on those actions. For project overview, the Trailside at Happy Valley proposal is located between Happy Valley Parkway on the north, Cayalejos on the south, 93rd Avenue alignment on the east, and 97th Avenue on the west. The entire project size is approximately 163 gross acres, and as mentioned, there are 2 requests that we are discussing this evening: a minor general plan amendment from estate residential to low-density residential, as well as a rezoning from R135 to a planned area development that would allow the development of up to 361 detached single-family homes. The lot sizes of this project vary greatly and range from 6,000 square feet all the way up to 35,000 square feet, which, as noted, the current zoning would be R135 and would permit the 35,000 square foot minimum lots. To provide some site context for you, as you can see, this project is located in close proximity to the last item that was up for discussion. You can see the SRP power easement does continue through the center of this project as well. That is the similar wide power corridor easement that would also be proposed for a multi-use trail. Located to the northwest, you'll see there's 4 large retail power centers located at the intersection of Lake Pleasant and Happy Valley. To the north, directly north of Happy Valley, there is existing residential, and to note again, Happy Valley Road is a 6-lane divided arterial in this area as well. It is a major connection east to west from I-17 to Loop 303. We also have Lake Pleasant Parkway, which is Peoria's predominant north-south connection. It's a major arterial, highly traveled with over 24,000 average daily trips currently. Of course, both of those roadways are, I imagine, not anywhere near capacity, as we've noted that there are a number of other projects that can be coming down the line in this area. To the east of this project, there's existing residential, and we have unincorporated Maricopa County properties to the south that vary in size. There are R118 equivalents, or 18,000 square foot lot equivalents, as well as 35,000 square foot lots. In addition, you'll see to the west of the site, there is a single-family residential development. However, at this point in time, there are very few lots developed in there, so it's primarily vacant. The current general plan land use for the area is residential estate, as noted, with the exception of the power corridor that would remain park open space. The applicant's request for the low-density residential does not incorporate the power line easement. That would remain as is. As you can see, the other land uses in the area, again, the very large commercial corridor or commercial centers to the northwest. There is residential low-density land use designation to the north across Happy Valley Road, and the remainder is primarily residential estate in the surrounding vicinity. To note, the designation that's being proposed for the zoning, we'll get into the density a little bit later, but the density is actually very close to the residential estate requirements. However, it is on the upper end, and the general plan land use amendment will ensure that the site and the proposal is most compatible or most in line with the general plan. So that is why they are proposing that amendment. On the zoning map, you can see the existing zoning of the site and some of the surrounding properties. As noted on the east, there is 35,000 square foot properties. There are also some SR 43 or 1 acre properties. And to the west, the R118 or 18,000 square foot lots. And again, to the south, there's a mix of 18,000 square foot lots and 35,000 square foot lots. The conceptual development plan that you see here is only the latest and the applicant's best attempt after many iterations and involvement with the neighbors. You can see on the right-hand side the delineation of the various densities that they're proposing. Along the perimeter of the project are the larger 35,000 square foot minimum lots for compatibility with adjacent residential, while moving northward towards the more heavily trafficked Happy Valley Road, and as well as the commercial centers, the somewhat smaller lots are placed. In addition, there is a gradual transition throughout the site from south and the exterior to the interior of the site. And as you can see, the wide power corridor easement, again, it will have a multi-use trail plan for that, so that will be an amenity that is open to the public and will continue the trail corridor that's planned throughout that area. The citizen participation for this plan involved our traditional and required notice of application and notice of hearing. They were all of the neighboring property owners within 1,320-foot radius of the site were notified, as well as HOAs located within 1 mile of the site. The applicant held their first neighborhood meeting on October 11, 2012, and there were a total of 63 residents attending. As a follow-up, based on the concerns that were received from the neighbors, the applicant made a number of revisions to the plan to address those concerns, and later decided to hold another neighborhood meeting, not required by staff, by the city, but in order to ensure that the residents were aware of the changes that had been made. At that meeting, there were it was at the same location, West Wing Elementary School. There were 58 residents in attendance. Following that, because there were still a few additional concerns that were received, and some of the same items were still items of concern, the applicant went ahead and had a number of small group meetings. At the time of our citizen participation plan that we received, they'd had 6, but I understand that they may have had several meetings after that since that time. a variety of citizen input has been received over the course of this case, and as you note, the case number is a 2012 number, indicating that the work on this case has been going on for since 2012. So there's been a long process. It's not been an overnight, and the applicant has put in quite a bit of work to understand the neighbors' concerns and to address and meet the needs both of the neighbors as well as the existing site constraints and the character of the overall area. Some of the citizen input, phone calls, numerous emails, which you'll see in front of you. You've received a copy of all the emails that have been received, as well as a petition that was received in March of, actually, the latest petition that was received in August 8th, just about a week ago or so. A second petition that was received by individuals who are stating that they do have opposition to this case. But due to the recent receipt of that petition, staff has not had the opportunity to map the locations of the addresses of those individuals. However, there's an understanding that many of the same individuals have signed the first and the second petition. What you see here on the map is a map of the locations of the residents who signed the first petition. The individuals, the dots that are located in green, are located in the city of Peoria. Those are city of Peoria residents. The area to the south of the project area, the dots that are indicated in red, that is the county island. So that is an area of unincorporated Maricopa County. In fact, does not go by the city's zoning standards and therefore may have differing characteristics. The circles, the concentric circles you see around the project site, are located at quarter-mile intervals. So that first circle would indicate everyone who would be located within 1/4 mile of the project, then 1/2 mile, all the way up to Joe Max Road, which is a full mile away from the project site. In addition to the distance from the project site, please note again the placement of Happy Valley Road, which is the divided 6-lane arterial, which also has a landscape buffer and a solid block wall along the north side currently. To identify some of the compatibility enhancements that the applicant has provided in order to help address the needs of the neighboring property owners, you can see there's been a very significant decrease in both the number of lots and the density of the overall development. Particularly along the southern half of the project, there was a significant increase in the size of the lots, as well as in the far northwest corner of the project. There was initially a zoning category that would be equivalent to RM1, which would allow for both multifamily attached or single-family attached products. That has been completely removed from the development design, and you can see it's been replaced with a minimum lot size of 6,000 square feet, which would only be for detached single-family residences. In addition, there's been a modification to the street system. As well as the last project presented, there have been were concerns received from the neighbors regarding the traffic flow through this neighborhood, potentially to the neighbors to the south. The initial plan had 95th Avenue running directly from Happy Valley south to Cayalejos. Due to the neighborhood concern that was raised on that, the applicant proposed a modified plan which has created a separation between the north half of the project and the south half of the project. 95th Avenue in the final revised plan does not connect through directly through the project, eliminating the potential concern of cut-through traffic along that roadway. At this point, access to the site will be primarily on the north through 95th Avenue. As you see to the south, there will be access, and the applicant will be required to construct half-streets along Cayalejos and the other bordering roadways. And there will be emergency access through the site from north to south, emergency again only. And as noted, the edge lots have been designed to match the size of the existing adjacent properties. In addition, the project has identified several enhancements over and above the minimal requirements of the zoning ordinance. The planned area development has proposed a considerable increase in open space, over 12 additional acres over the minimum requirement. And you can see those open spaces are throughout the project, both with community gathering areas as well as significant landscape buffers and increased street frontage landscaping. You can note the Happy Valley frontage landscaping between 31 to 36 feet, the very wide 95th Avenue landscaping of 91 feet, creating very significant buffers to those adjacent properties. Along the south on Calle Lejos, there will be a buffer, and the existing residential is located on the other side of that street. So there will be an arterial roadway between, or excuse me, I believe a collector roadway between the existing residential and the proposed future, as well as a landscape buffer. A few of those illustrations show some of the roadway cross-sections as proposed. Based on that, your staff report does indicate full findings. The essence of these findings is that the proposed general plan amendment from residential estate to residential low density best reflects the existing conditions of the area, including the fact that there are existing high-traveled transportation corridors that will likely become even more greatly traveled in the future, as well as the considerable commercial corridor and commercial hub that is at the intersection of Happy Valley and Lake Pleasant Parkway. In addition, the rezoning request will result in a residential development that is both compatible with the existing residential neighbors as well as the existing commercial development, creating a situation that's both amenable for the existing residents as well as those that would be potential residents to this development. Based on the applicant's numerous iterations and the work that was done with the neighboring communities, it's believed that the proposal provides that best mix for all parties involved. And our recommendations to the Commission with that would be approval, recommendation of approval of GPA 12-0005 to City Council, as well as a recommendation of approval of case Z12-0005 to the City Council, subject to the conditions as stated in the staff report. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions for the staff? Commissioner Loper?
Madam Chair, Melissa, do you have a diagram that shows this as an aerial in context with kind of the streets around it?
It may be a bit small, but Commissioner Loper, you should be able to see the adjacent roadways, as well as the fact that Calle Lejos does have a light existing at Lake Pleasant Parkway.
And 95th Avenue obviously is a major
Correct.
north-south connection. The original land use plan that the applicant came forward with, it showed a connection between the north and south areas. And I think if I understood you correctly, and forgive me, I'm bad head cold, that was taken out. Why?
Commissioner Loper, there was concern from the adjacent residents that that connection would create additional cut-through traffic, I believe, and it was a matter of a traffic concern primarily. It is a very proposed as a very wide, nicely landscaped area, so it does create a very attractive roadway, certainly.
So their concern, if there was a connection between the north and south halves, was that people would go from the north downward into their development?
I believe that's correct, Commissioner Loper.
To go to their homes or to what? Do you know?
Commissioner Member, one of the concerns that we heard as staff was that this 95th Avenue actually lines up with the roadway that leads into the north side of Liberty High School. So there was a expressed concern that this would become a cut-through traffic to allow people to get to Liberty High School, both in the AM and the PM.
So it's really for more the high school, not the people, because it would seem that
A bit of both, but
direct access to 91st, people would want it in that area. So, okay, that was all I had. Thank you.
Any other? Yes, Commissioner Hutchinson?
Calle Lejos looks like it'll be a main access point for many of the residents here. Who's picking up the improvements and the maintenance for that roadway?
Commissioner Hutchinson, the applicant would be required to do half-street improvements along the southern border of their property, and those would typically include the roadway, the curb and gutter, and sidewalk.
Is there any plan to make it a larger road, more lanes? It's only one lane on each direction, I believe.
Commissioner Loper, let me pull up the cross-section here for you. Oh. Let's see. I believe so.
Yeah, Commissioner, it actually, Caleo shows up on the city's circulation plan as a collector roadway. I believe it's a minor collector, so it would actually have one lane of traffic in each direction with a center turn lane. It's the standard cross-section for that street at an ultimate build-out section. Right now, it's not quite there, partly because we have the county residents, Maricopa County on the southern end of that roadway. So, I think maintenance-wise, do we maintain that one? No, we do not maintain that. It's actually Maricopa County, currently for Calejos.
Any other questions of the staff? Yes. Commissioner Spraker?
Again? Okay. I have a couple of questions. Just one, just to be sure. Now, at the main entrance off Happy Valley Road, one of your illustrations showed the stoplights. That means that there is a traffic signal at that particular location, okay? Secondly, in the event of an issue with, let's say, with public safety or fire or something to the southern half of this, that is to the south half of the SRP alignment, is there going to be emergency vehicle access across that SRP alignment, and then how would they get into the next development if there is, that would be the most logical way for an emergency vehicle to go? And I'm not talking just about EMT, but rather if there's a fire or some major thing took place.
Commissioner Spraker, there will be emergency access across the easement. You can see in faint lines aligning with the roadways of the north and south of the project through the area illustrated in blue on the western edge of the project. You can see that narrow connection. That would be the emergency access point.
Okay, I see it now. Thank you. Another question. Maybe this is an observation, not so much a question. First, let me say, if all these folks are here because, you know, it's really nice to have people who are really interested in what's going on and to have an input, because so often we as citizens just walk away and think everything's going to fall into place the way we want it, and it doesn't always work that way. So thank you for being here. I'm just, you know, I like the plan. I think it's a nice plan. I do have an observation, though. It seems like every plan that comes up is that all of the streets are like bowling alleys. There's no curvilinear except where there's a cul-de-sac or we've got to go around a mandatory corner or something to that effect. And it would seem to be that if we're building character and the first case, the elevations for the proposed homes really look nice. I'm presuming that they'll be the same here. Nobody builds junk anymore in that respect. But it would be nice if, and I'm not proposing a change in anything at this point, but it would be nice to see if there was a way in which the builder can afford to do what he's going to be doing here, but design it so that it has some character to it and not bowling alleys, straight and level streets. Just an observation.
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, Commissioner Spraker, just a note, on this particular application, we have not received a preliminary plat yet. Now, when we get a preliminary plat in, one of the things we look at is we have a number of policy and design requirements in our design review manual, and we have this similar concern too about having long, uninterrupted roadways. So as part of that preliminary plat, we do have some standards that a block length can only be so long before there's a curvilinear aspect to it. So right now what you're looking at is just representative.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is the applicant here and would he like to speak? Thank you. You please state your name and your address.
Thank you, Ms. Golden. For your record, my name is Mike Curley. My address is 3101 North Central. Just by way of addressing a couple of questions that were raised, in terms of Mr. Hutchinson's question about Calejos, I wanted to confirm that the south half of Calejos is the county. Will be improving the north half, so it'll be a full street. Again, as Melissa just indicated, 95th Avenue is a lit intersection, and again, I'll point out this in a second, but there is also a second access point on Happy Valley. I'm sorry.
Just one moment. The gentleman back here says he can't hear. Is that it?
Okay, I'll try to speak up.
Thank you.
There is a secondary access to the west of the main access on Happy Valley. Both of those access points will have deceleration lanes. I'm just raising that because it was raised in the prior case. As Melissa just indicated, there is emergency access provided to link the north and south half, so that if there was an emergency and the trucks came in or the ambulance came in from Happy Valley, they would be able to access through the Salt River Project parcel into our area. And again, Mr. Spraker, regarding the comments of curvy linear streets, I think Chris has hit the nail on the head. We're certainly willing to take a look at that and try to incorporate those type of design elements as we go through the process. And then lastly, Mr. Spraker, when you said you're happy to see that there's participation, I have about 2.5 decades worth of dealing with North Peoria projects, and I can certainly attest to the fact that this area, you can say a lot of things about it, but apathy is not one of the things that characterizes the residents of this area. So with that background, let me just begin by saying I'm representing Rialto Capital. They own the 160 acres, and the request obviously comes before you with staff support. I think very importantly, the density here is 2.2 units per acre. There was some discussion about the general plan when we initially filed the general plan. Our density was well over 3 units per acre, so there was no question that a general plan was necessary. And as Melissa's indicated, and I'm going to talk about it in a minute, a portion of the northwest corner of this site was a proposal for some what I'll call townhouses or cluster development. It's 7 units the acre. It was detached product. That was very much objected to by the neighbors, and as we went through the process, that was eliminated. So at the end of the day, we're down to 2.2 units per acre, which essentially is slightly over what the existing general plan density is. And lastly, the request comes to you with at least the support of some of the neighborhood leaders, some of which were the most vociferous objectors to this case when we first began our process, and I'll explain how we got to that point. There's 3 major points that I just want to touch upon as in the next couple of minutes. One is just, I'm going to try not to repeat Melissa's overview of the master plan because I think she did a very good job, but I want to just touch upon the master plan, then I want to touch upon the secondary issue, which I think is the main issue, which is the density, but also the third point is the process of how we got here, because I think it's really a testament to both my clients willing to negotiate and try to address the neighbors' concerns, and it's also a testament to many of the neighbors who very actively participated in this case and helped us through these discussions to reach a consensus, at least with a portion of the neighborhood. So, Rick, this is obviously the master plan, 160 acres. And when we looked at this original property, we thought that in keeping with what has happened with other master plans in the community, starting from the south at Camino El Lago, going up to Fletcher Heights, going out to Terramar, going up to West Wing, we thought that taking a comprehensive master plan approach to this 160 acres has some real significant benefits. It benefits not only the property but the area, and the benefits are that you can have a comprehensive way of addressing circulation, you can provide for significant open space, you can provide for entry treatments, perimeter landscaping, a lot of elements that don't necessarily occur if the property is just developed in a piecemeal fashion pursuant to the underlying zoning. And so just looking at some of these features, Rick, you can see, let's go back for 1 second, you can see that on the entry of 95th Avenue, there is a significant landscaped feature as you're coming in, and landscaped elements you're coming in off 95th, and Rick, go to the next one, please. This is sort of a blow-up of the Happy Valley entrance, and there'll be a decorative wall along Happy Valley Road, which will have to be 8 feet pursuant to the city's standards. Then this tree-lined entry along 95th Avenue ranges between 60 to up to 250 feet in width. So it's a real ceremonial type of entrance in our view. The open space, which Melissa indicated, is indicated in the highlight areas. We estimate that it's about 30% of the property. You can come in. The SRP easement will be improved with equestrian facilities in addition to a multi-use trail. And one of the benefits of having 95th Avenue without it going directly north-south to Calle Lejos was the equestrian community made it very clear to us that having 95th Avenue go through to connect through the SRP easement was potentially disruptive to the equestrian community, who really foresees a master trail that will go from Lake Pleasant Parkway to the eastern boundaries of the city. And so by not having the vehicular connection, you're obviously accommodating that equestrian lifestyle. So in addition to the SRP easement, there is a pedestrian trail that will run down 95th Avenue to connect up into that SRP area, and also on the west end over at 97th Avenue in the highlighted area, there's a pedestrian trail that goes down the western part of the property. There's a whole series of pocket parks throughout the property, in addition to community parks, all of which will be improved as part of this application. As Melissa indicated, the perimeter is buffered. Happy Valley is going to have a 30-foot landscape setback. Along 97th Avenue on the west, we'll have anywhere up to about 60 to about 90 feet of a landscape buffer. Calle Leos has 20 feet, and again, 6-foot decorative walls on all sides, with the exception of the Happy Valley, which will have an 8-foot wall. Then lastly, we think importantly, the way that we have treated the edge in terms of having the edge labeled with acre and half-acre lots, we think is a really significant gesture in terms of respecting what exists around us to the south and the east and west. So again, I think that just in general terms, we think the master plan approach is going to benefit this area, is going to benefit the property. It's not going to disrupt anyone's lifestyle. And again, I think the proof of the pudding is when you look at the master plans, and Rick, go to this next one. When you look at the master plans that are in this area, next one, Rick, that are in this area, which are Fletcher Farms, West Ring, Pleasant Valley, all of these that are represented on this aerial, several of which I've been involved with. I don't think anybody can stand here and in good faith and say that any of these master plans have been injurious to the area. I think they're generally viewed as being some of the jewels of the city. So again, we think that we're in keeping with that history. So going to the lot size issue, which is I think the main issue here, I think that staff agrees with us that having some mix of lots here is appropriate for a number of reasons. And number one, we're in a master plan community. It's a larger area. We're 2.2 units per acre. But I think importantly, there needs to be a recognition that Happy Valley has changed radically over the past 5 to 7 years. When I first came out and started doing work in this area, and I had zoned 2 of the 4 corners at the intersection of Happy Valley and Lake Pleasant Parkway, the character of Happy Valley Road was entirely different. I mean, it basically has now been transformed into a 6-lane parkway. I think that right now, as Melissa said, there are about 25,000 trips per day. I've actually looked at the trip counts that have occurred over the past 7 years, and almost every single year there's been an increase of about 5,000 trips per day. A couple of years, 5 years ago, I think there was somewhere in the neighborhood of 7,000 trips. So you can just see that this is going to become a major corridor, and I think that trend is going to continue, particularly now the fact that the Loop 303 has an exit off of Happy Valley. So given that character, I think that some medium-sized lots here are appropriate. And then as staff also indicates, Rick, let's go back to the aerial for a second. When you look at our site and you look at the intersection of Happy Valley and Lake Pleasant Parkway with the enormous amount of commercial that exists at that corner, it's one of the most heavily commercialized intersections in the valley. There's over 2 million square feet of retail space planned at that particular intersection and developed at that particular intersection. I think staff, in light of that, is right on when they point out that having some sort of transitional land use in terms of intensity or separation from intensity is appropriate. Also, as it relates to the commercial, in connection with another case that I'm involved with, we've been really studying how the commercial at that intersection has done over the past couple of years, and it's no secret that it has suffered, and it's suffered significant vacancies. Right now at that intersection, there's about 50 acres of zoned but undeveloped area amongst the 4 corners. That constitutes about 500,000 square feet of yet-to-be-developed commercial in that area. Much of the commercial has suffered greatly as a result of the economic slowdown. There's been a lot of vacancies that have occurred. And so from a land use standpoint, but maybe more so from an economic standpoint, I think that generating sales tax, which obviously is only going to come about to the extent you have additional rooftops, is necessary and is part of the planning process. And the sales tax obviously are supporting the city services from police, fire, library, and streets. And those type of city services, and I realize I'm getting a little bit of far afield in terms of land use, but the fact of the matter is those city services just can't be sustained if you have got only 1 acre zoning for miles and miles within the city. So for all those reasons, we agree with staff's recommendation and staff's analysis. But having said that, we recognize that when we came into this area, there was an obligation on our part to respect and be sensitive to the adjacent development. We believe when you go through this site plan, and I think staff believes, and I think at least some of the neighborhood representatives who are here tonight believe that we've done that, we've been respectful and we've been sensitive, and this land use plan is a good compromise in terms of the city's desire, the developer's desire, as well as the neighborhood. And what I thought I would do is just for 1 or 2 minutes go through a very brief chronology of what's happened over the past year. We've actually been in the zoning queue for over a year, and the reason why we've been in for this long is because we have met repeatedly in an attempt to try to address the concerns of both the city as well as the neighbors. And the plan that is before you tonight is radically different than the plan that we started out with. So starting with the first neighborhood meeting, let's go to the first plan. This is, let's go back, Rick, to the first plan. This was the first plan that was originally submitted. When we had our neighborhood meeting in October of 2012, it was a zoning attorney's nightmare. We went into a very small room in West Wing High School. There was bad ventilation. There was a hostile crowd. Staff's report said there were 63 people there. It felt to me like there were 6,300 people there. But the site plan basically showed a mix of lots, and again, without going through all the detail, around the perimeter, the blue and yellow were 12 and 10,000 square foot lots. And then as you got up into the interior, there were smaller lots. And the corner, parcel B in the northwest corner, that was where we had this cluster product, which was the 7 to the unit type of development. And then, as staff has indicated, 95th Avenue sort of serpentine through the property, and the density was a 3.2, and there were 500 lots. The residents made it very loud and clear after I got done making my presentation that there were a whole host of objections to this plan. One was along the perimeter. They didn't feel the lots were big enough, and again, we had 10 and 12,000s around the three sides. They wanted to have larger lots to interface with the existing developments that were particularly on the south, the west, and the east. They were adamant that they didn't want 95th Avenue to go through, and as one of you had asked, I think Mr. Loper was saying the concern was twofold about 95th Avenue. It was going down to the high school, and when you go down south of Calle Lejos, and I've driven these streets, they're very quiet, secluded streets, and so I could understand the concern. I mean, I understand that development brings change, but I definitely could understand the concern, and the concern was that this whole subdivision was going to bleed through their subdivision down to the high school. There was also a concern that just if people wanted to get out to either the east or the west, Happy Valley would naturally be avoided because it is sometimes difficult to take a right or left. The intersection at Happy Valley and Lake Pleasant Parkway is potentially down the road going to be somewhat of a problem, and so the path of least resistance, I think the neighbors felt, was to go directly to the south on 95th Avenue, south of Calle Lejos. So they expressed these concerns, and we went back to the drawing board, and it took us about 4 months to have the second neighborhood meeting. And Rick, let's show this. And some of the major changes that we showed are that we ringed now the perimeter with the rural 35 lots, and then we transitioned them to the R118 lots, the half-acre lots. That was a significant change. We dropped about 65 lots from the original submittal, and then you can see the two access points down at Calle Lejos that are circled in yellow. What we did was we tried to make 95th Avenue more circuitous, so instead of it being a straight shot from Happy Valley down to Calle Lejos, we tried to split it off so that there would still be vehicular connectivity that would bind the entire project, but by making it circuitous, we thought it would become less convenient for cut-through traffic, and this would hopefully be an acceptable type of circulation system to the neighbors. And Rick, and then we actually went to 1 point because the 2 points that were circled were people had concerns about that. So this alignment that we proposed aligns with 95th Avenue to the south. The second neighborhood meeting was considerably better than the first one. I think there was generally a recognition that the client had come a long way, had addressed a number of their concerns. There was definitely an appreciation for the acre lots on the perimeter and the half acres, but there were still a number of concerns. The RM1, the parcel up in the northwest corner, the cluster, was still objected to. 95th Avenue was a major adamant concern that they had. I talked about the equestrian trail, and several of the equestrian members talking about the problem of having to go through, even though it was going to be circuitous. It was still problematic. At the end of that meeting, several neighbors and I sort of got together, and they were the neighborhood leaders. As a matter of fact, one of them who was here tonight, who was the primary person who was circulating the petition, And we sort of both concluded that it might be beneficial, rather than to have these large meetings, which sometimes are not the most productive meetings because they either turn into shouting matches or whatever, that perhaps the best thing to do would be to break into some smaller groups so we could try to have some dialogue here and try to narrow down the issues. And so I agreed to do that, and 2 different groups were formed, and I want to make sure that people in the audience understand the people who were on these groups were the people who were the leading opposition to the first two plans that were submitted. So this isn't like we cherry-picked who the participants were going to be. So we got together and actually met over the span of about 9 months. We met 9 individual times trying to winnow down the differences. And we discussed everything from buffering to drainage. We actually had one of the residents who I think you're going to hear from tonight very concerned about drainage. We had our engineer who was very familiar with the property came out and had some very lengthy discussions about drainage. But the bottom line is, at the end of the day, the neighbors basically said, look, if it were our preference, we'd like to have this all 1 acre lots. I think there was some recognition that that probably wasn't in the cards because there's an enormous inventory of acre lots in this particular area. But they said there are certain things which we think are just fundamental to the protection of our neighborhood. And one was eliminating the RM1 piece. Second thing is keep this acre and half-acre buffers around the perimeter, and then somehow or another devise a plan so that 95th Avenue could be addressed, i.e. that it would not go south of the power lines. I knew that was going to be a tall order because we had already dropped the number of lots from 500 down to 430. The RM1, in our view, up in the corner was appropriate because it's tucked up right against the power center, so we thought it was an appropriate transition. And also in addition to being on Lake Pleasant Parkway. And then finally, 95th Avenue, I thought it not going all the way to Callejos was going to be a problem from staff, and we didn't know how the circulation pattern was going to work if 95th Avenue was going to be eliminated. And to be perfectly honest, my client wanted to have 95th Avenue go down to Callejos for a couple of reasons. One, from a marketing perspective, marketing the southern end of the property without having direct access from 95th Avenue makes it much more difficult. So we clearly, from a selfish standpoint, would have preferred that it go through. From a circulation standpoint, the very reasons why some of the neighbors to the south of Callejos were concerned about it, we liked it. I mean, it was convenient access for us to avoid the intersection of Lake Pleasant Parkway, maybe avoid Happy Valley, and go to the south, get to the high school. And we thought that since we had made it discontinuous, that would have hopefully addressed the concerns. But at the end of the day, the neighbors were very firm that if we could prove that the elimination of 95th Avenue could be done, they wanted it done. I knew that getting 95th Avenue was going to cause a considerable delay because we were going to have to revise our traffic study because our original traffic study didn't analyze what was going to happen to the area circulation system if 95th Avenue was eliminated. So I knew that we were going to have to amend that, and it was also going to require some very extensive discussions and meeting with the staff. But at the end of the day, the neighbors and I basically came to the agreement that with the acknowledgement that every neighbor that I dealt with would prefer to have acre lots, I didn't want to go on a wild goose chase on this 95th Avenue if at the end of the day I determined we could get rid of it and yet the neighbors still were going to be opposed. And so we had a very frank discussion, and before we parked this case for 4 months, I basically said, look, if I can get rid of this RM1 and if I can get my client to eliminate the 95th Avenue and get staff to agree that this was not going to hurt the area circulation system, will you support or not oppose the case? And the answer was yes. And I think the reason is because they recognize that with the elimination of the RM1, with the elimination of 95th Avenue, this was a plan that protected their neighborhood. And so we basically parked the zoning case and for about 5 months went down this journey with our traffic engineer and with the city's willingness to sit down and meet with us to analyze what would happen to this project and what would happen to all of the intersections that are in this area, Happy Valley and Lake Pleasant Parkway, 91st and Happy Valley, Pinnacle Peak, Deer Valley, and 95th. And we analyzed all those intersections, and I want to really compliment staff. Staff met with us about 5 or 6 times. I think that from a purely circulation standpoint, they would have preferred that 95th Avenue go through. But in the end, when we were able to prove that there was not going to be any significant degradation to any of those other intersections in the area, and it was not going to seriously degrade the property circulation. Staff, I think, looked at this and said, look, there's a whole host of issues that need to be considered here. Circulation is one of them, but trying to have a project that worked well and having the neighbors in the area basically buy in was important. And so at the end of the day, the current site plan is what's in front of you. And basically, as Melissa's indicated, it's almost two different projects. I mean, it is connected from a pedestrian standpoint. It is still connected by a trail standpoint. There is the emergency access, as Mr. Spraker had indicated. And so the 95th Avenue basically terminates on the north side of the property, and now the north side of the property will exit to Happy Valley with the two streets that intersect with that, and then there are two access points on the southern piece of the property. And again, when we went through this exercise and eliminated the RM1 piece, we lost an additional 75 units. So, Rick, this is just sort of the end of the chronology, and I'm going to wind up in a minute, and I apologize for speaking so long, but there's been a lot of history associated with this. So we actually started door-to-door in August. We went out into a neighborhood alerting people of the project, had the two neighborhood meetings in October and March. That were the large-scale meetings. Next one, Rick. These are the meeting dates where we met in the smaller two groups, which were 9 in total, and then we had 6 meetings with the staff going through a very detailed analysis of the 95th Avenue issue. And so, the conclusion, at least in our view, is that at the end of the day, we think that we've acted extremely responsibly in terms of addressing neighborhood concerns. Again, I think the master plan approach is something that is a good way to treat a larger piece of property like this. And again, I don't want to belabor the point in terms of thanking people, but I do want to thank staff. They spent a lot of time with us on this case. I think they were extraordinarily sensitive to the adjacent neighbors. And some of the neighbors, when I first went out there, many of them just said, hey, we're county residents. We know the city doesn't care about us. That couldn't be farther from the truth, and I think that the evidence is the amount of time the staff spent on this. I want to thank my client who gave me the time to negotiate this. Most clients have a gun to our head because time is money. They want to get through the process. And on big parcels, particularly in this area where you're having larger county parcel, older county acreage, you need time to try to discuss the issues and try to flush them out. And again, I want to thank the neighbors who took the time to meet with us. They were tough. They were unwavering in their commitment to this area, but they were at all times gracious and accommodating. They really deserve their fellow neighbors' thanks, because without their efforts, I did not think 95th Avenue was going to be resolved to everyone's satisfaction, but because of their efforts, they did. So with that, I'm going to take a drink of water, take a breath, and I'll answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Anyone on the commission have a question for the panel? Okay, thank you. And, I'm sorry. Commissioner Hutchinson?
Who's building this project? There's a lot of houses here. There's 300 some odd houses. Have we made any decisions on who's going to build this?
What we are probably going to be putting in the infrastructure. I mean, at this point right now, there's this area of the valley is probably the hottest residential area, even surpassing the southeast area, Gilbert and Chandler. Enormous amount of activity in the whole 303 corridor, Happy Valley. But we've had discussions with a whole host of home builders, but haven't landed on it yet. But we will probably put the infrastructure in and then sell off the homes to home builders.
As a possible stipulation to this approval tonight, would you consider an agreement to work with city staff and maybe some of the county one-stops and other labor organizations to make sure that maybe Peoria residents get to work in a Peoria project?
That's been doing cases for a long time. That's something that hasn't come up in a while. I don't think we have any objection, but I need to speak to the client first.
We got a lot of residents out of work, construction workers in particular. I'm an electrician myself. I live in Peoria. I can't tell you the last time I did a project here. Sure would like to see some interest from the developers that come into Peoria to hire Peoria residents. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Loper.
Madam Chair, a question for the applicant. So I understand you went through this evolution regarding 95th Avenue, and the agreement with the neighbors was to not have 95th Avenue, and it sounds like you as the applicant, you're in support of that.
Yes, sir.
It seems to me, though, that I keep harping on this, a little bit different case than the previous one, but what you've done is you've forced that south half of the subdivision to absolutely go through those neighbors versus a lot of them would have gone up to Happy Valley and gone east, or maybe they would have gone west to the intersection to the commercial. But now if I live in that south half, I have to go through those developments to go to Target or to go to Home Depot or to do anything. I don't have that option of going north. And while I understood the rationale for not wanting the cut through to go to the high school, it seems like the reverse to me, in my experience with traffic, would have been is that area would have funneled people going north. Through your development, you would have got the people that wanted to use that as a way to get out to Happy Valley, not the reverse. I understand the high school part of it, and I wonder if that came up at all during it, if I'm just beating a dead horse with trying to resurrect the 95th Avenue.
I think you're beating a dead horse. I mean,
Okay.
we spent a lot of time discussing this, and I mean, I can tell you that of all the issues that were confronted with any of the site plans, the 95th Avenue was, I think, and again, the neighbors can speak for themselves. I don't want to put words in the mouth, but the 95th Avenue was very strongly felt. And I think that the rationale was that because Happy Valley is going to increase in traffic over time, as it's done for the past 5 or 6 years, because the Happy Valley and Lake Pleasant intersection is not the best, that the path of least resistance is going to be going to the south. Kai Lejos, as staff has indicated, is a collector, and also the density on the southern half is much less than the density on the north half. The density on the south half is it's 1.7 units per acre. It's 137 lots. On the north half, it's 224, so it's about 2.5. So it's not an even split in terms of the density because the tapering and the buffering took primarily on the south side.
Thank you. Hey, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, Chris.
Sorry, Madam Chair, if you could, just to be clear, when we started the case, you opened the public hearing for the general plan, but before we take public comment, can you formally open the public hearing for the zoning case as well? Just so procedurally we're on track then.
Say that again.
If you could formally open the public hearing for the zoning case as well, just so procedurally we're on track.
Oh, I didn't.
Right.
Oh, I apologize. So you'd like me to formally?
Hearing for both the general plan amendment and the rezone case.
Okay. I'm going to officially open the public hearing. Okay, thank you. I apologize.
And Madam Chair, could you make it clear that you're opening the public hearing both on GPA 12-0005 as well as zoning 12-005?
Would you like me to repeat that?
Just that we're clear on that and that the public is clear on that.
So yes, do repeat.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay. I'd like to open the public hearing for GPA 12-0005 and Z12-005. Thank you. Okay, we have a number of people who would like to speak tonight, and I do want to emphasize you do have the 3 minutes, and please don't keep repeating the same thing your fellow, the other speakers have repeated. So, and if we get to your name and everything you have to say has already been said, please just let me know. Okay, we're going to start tonight with Kathy Irwin. Kathy, Ms. Irwin? When you come up, would you please state your name and your address?
Good evening. I'm Kathy Irwin. I live at 9201 West Villa Lindo Drive, which is 5 acres away from the east end of the project. I have lived there since 1989. I am a realtor in the Northwest Valley. I sell basically horse properties in Glendale and Peoria. And I must say that there are no properties in our area within a mile area, north, south, east, or west, that is less than a half an acre. I see that we're going to have 6,000 square foot properties, and I'd just like to know if there's any people here tonight that are from Melton Ranch, because those are half-acre properties, and the properties are valued in the $1 million range. I don't know how they'll like lower-end properties right abutting their property. Also, there is a difference between a 35 43,000 square foot lot and a 43,650 square foot lot, which is a full acre. The other is considered a commercial acre or a city acre, which would not have any horse privileges or such. I don't know how the people that would be moving into this area would like to hear burros and roosters and have the general fauna and flora and smell of our existing neighborhood. There are more properties that are 43,650 square feet along the east end and the south end than has been mentioned before. So I would say, based on what the previous group of people from Sunrise Vista said, they are trying to keep it to the characteristic of the neighborhood. And I would say we would like to keep it to the characteristic of the neighborhood. In other words, anything under a half an acre is inappropriate and out of character. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Gary Mendeski?
Hi, my name's Gary Mendeski. I live at 9247 West Villa Lindo. And I'm right at 93rd Avenue in Villa Lindo, so my property borders it. I've been living there 28 years. When I moved there, it was all zoned 1 acre lots. That's why I bought there. Speak up. I can't hear you. Oh, sorry. Okay. So what we're doing is, I tried to find out some of the information of people that were signing the petitions, which I signed the first 2 petitions, but I never could get any response on what was going on or with it, what was happening. Hurley said that he met with a bunch of people that had signed the petitions and went with it, and that's great. But a lot of us that signed the petitions didn't know anything about it. So what I've got is, in a week's time, there was 4 of us that petitioned the neighborhood, and we got 226 signatures from people that went ahead and are opposition to this. So we have copies of the signatures for you, each one of you, if you'd like them, so that you can go ahead and get the information, because when I went to planning and zoning, you get the information. They sent me the information, but all they had was the names, no addresses, no contact points. I tried to get in contact with the people that were on the petitions. I couldn't get in contact. So I was one of the ones that went around and got the new petition going out, which we have 226 signatures in opposition in a week's time. So you can't tell me that there's not opposition to this, okay? We weren't aware of some of the meetings that they held with some of the people that were on the petitions. I was on the petition. My name was on it. I was never contacted. They said they went door to door to people. I don't work. I'm retired. I'm there all the time. I got nothing to do, 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week. I'm in opposition. I'm fighting you. Okay? Who can we give these to?
Can we accept those?
What are those?
Those are petitions that 226 people signed in opposition to this, with a map of the area. Thank you. In a lot of this, they went ahead and, even in their own deal, you're talking about builders and developers. These aren't the builders, these are the developers. Part of the problem that we had with this first meeting was when they come in and they're going to go ahead and put this in, how many different builders are they going to have doing this? Well, I live right there. Are they going to go ahead and put the fences in all the way around this proposal and keep the building in there? Part of the problem is they're not going to do that. They said they're not going to do that. What they're going to do is they're going to sell off certain pieces to different people. They're going to come in and build different properties, different sections. So what do we do when we live next door to it? If you're going to come in, put the perimeter fence around the whole thing, keep this thing nice, neat.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments. Your time's up. Thank
Okay.
you. Howard Cassett?
Howard Cassett, 24018 North 93rd Avenue. Well, other people have covered mostly what I was going to have to say, but a couple of things here. I wanted to call the attention to the fact that Shea Homes, just down on 87th and Calileos, they're building homes down there, almost as large as the lots they want to have. They're building 4,000 to 4,500 square foot homes. Down over on 93rd Avenue and Happy Valley, their Merit is building homes over in there. They're from 2,600 square feet to 5,600 square feet. Again, almost as large as these 147 6,000 square foot lots. I don't think this plan is compatible to the existing area. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it. John Luke?
My name is John Luke. My address is P.O. Box 11256 Glendale. I live south of the proposed development, and I own some custom home lots immediately west of Trailside. First of all, I want to thank the city of Peoria for encouraging the applicant to work with the neighbors, and I want to thank the applicant and Mr. Curley for listening to the concerns of the neighbors. I understand that my position may be different than many of my neighbors, and I certainly respect their position. After the two large public meetings, Mr. Curley agreed to meet with a small group of neighbors to better understand the concerns that we had about this development. And through that process, the applicant listened to the concerns and to how we suggested he could mitigate the concerns we had. And we saw through the process the applicant made a number of significant changes to the development. And as has been stated, the current plan now, the total number of lots is reduced by 140 lots from their initial proposal. They've eliminated entirely all the RM1 zoning within the community. They have bordered the development adjacent to large neighboring lots with R135 lots. And they've created a traffic pattern that does not permit shortcuts from Pinnacle Peak to Happy Valley, which is a pretty big deal for many of us. The plan isn't a perfect plan, but I do believe it's a good plan, and it clearly demonstrates that the developer was sensitive to the concerns of the neighborhood. We see significant changes that were made in the plan to address the concerns of the neighborhood. And I appreciate their efforts. I appreciate what the city did and the applicant's willingness to make changes. And I support the plan in its current, as it currently stands.
Thank you, Mr. Luke.
Thank you.
Richard Thonger?
Hello. Let me get my plan for you. I know I won't have time to show you this, but you know, we've been working on this deal for over a year with these guys, trying to get the traffic problem straightened away. So it hasn't got straightened away for over a year, so I designed this myself. I'm an old infrastructure man. I'm retired now, but I've done it for about 60 years for the developers. And this is a plan, traffic plan, that will work for the subdivision, but it will take some time to show it to everybody here and show it to the developer. I've already sent a copy to the developer yesterday. But talking about the developer, the man that represented himself a couple minutes ago up here as the applicant, and boy, he talked about nothing but 95th Street. Oh, I've had so many meetings with 95th. I heard 95th Street mentioned 7 or 8 times that he met with these people on 95th Street and made a deal with them for this and made a deal with them that. I live on 95th Street, and I've never seen a gentleman in my life. I've been to one meeting, the first meeting we had at the high school over there, and with some other people from his office. And the traffic problem is the big problem. This subdivision cannot be built as planned like it's shown up there on that board right now, because that dumps all the traffic on 93rd, 95th, and 97th, and Galileo, which all 4 of those streets are county, in the county island. You call from some maintenance, you call the city of Peoria, and they say, oh, that's county, you got to go to county. You call the county says, oh, you got to go to Peoria, that's not us. So you just get the run. There's no service. These are unimproved roads. They're unimproved roads. I'm an old road builder. They don't get any service from anybody. They don't get no security for anybody. We're on our own out there in that island. At 95th Street, right now, we make it a nice street on our own. We have kids, young mothers and dads that take their kids, and it's a lovely sight to see every evening after dinner. Dad's leading the way on the bicycle, and then there's 3 kids on the little tricycles following, then mom's following them, and then maybe a half hour later you got a horse coming down the street. And these people are getting hurt. These people have got $1 million homes. They got hit for 50% of it here a few years ago, and now if this thing goes through and they dump all this traffic on here as you see that plan, they're going to get hit for another 50% loss.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Saunders. Your time's up. Thank you. I appreciate it. Ryan Denkick, did you want to speak? You didn't mark that. Okay, thank you.
My name is Ryan Denke. I'm at 9601 West Electra Lane. I'm due south of the project, and every night I walk my dogs around the area and up and down 93rd, 97th Avenues. There's a reason why the initial plan calls for 0 to 2, and that's because it was a good plan. That's what the area is. That's what it calls for. There's not a 6,000 square foot lot. I think you probably have to go at least a mile before you find one. The other consideration, there's no reason to approve this request. It's a great location. It'll be developed to the original standards if you decline this. So there'll be plenty of tax revenue. That is no concern. Just we can keep with the existing plan. The developers, it seems they have made no arrangements or talks with the counties to improve the infrastructure around the project, and they don't have to. I understand that, but the current situation is untenable as it is, and then we're going to compound that by dumping all these new residents in the area, going down Calileos, which is half a street, to Lake Pleasant Parkway to go to their shopping, or down 95th Avenue because they're going to go to the 101 every day to get to their job. And there's just so much traffic, and I can barely walk my dogs and have a car pass me on 95th Avenue. There's just not enough room on the existing 95th Avenue. And in the meetings, they didn't seem to care about the existing state of the infrastructure with the county, and it seems like they've made no efforts to work with the county to make this project work. The area also suffers some pretty bad drainage problems. I don't know if this project will affect that. I'm very concerned about that, and I'm not saying that with the current infrastructure we need to keep the density as low as I think we need to keep the current, we can proceed with development, but we need to keep the density as low as possible to keep from compounding and making these existing infrastructures problems worse than they already are. I think that's all I have.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Jeff Hightower?
Hello, my name is Jeff Hightower. I live at 9821 West Avenida del Sol. I am a city resident, and I don't live in the county island. I've recently been annexed into the city. One of the major issues that I think all of the neighbors have is obviously the traffic. And the fact that this borders a county island is going to present a huge amount of traffic that's going to come on to county property that the city has nothing to do with. And I think that that's part of the reason why everybody is so adamant about not dumping all that traffic. So as the density increases, the traffic's going to leave this development and come on, be forced on to county streets that the city's going to have nothing to do with. And I think not being cognizant of that is, frankly, irresponsible on the city's part. And living on 97th, or just off of 97th Avenue, and building several homes within the area, both off of 95th and 97th, I know that all of those have drainage issues. I also realize that it's a rural lifestyle that we have. We've been promised equestrian trails by both our city representatives, even though we were county, and they haven't happened. And I think that those obligations and commitments that the city has made over the last 20 years needs to be recognized. I think the developer's gone way out of his way to make concessions in the plan that he's come up with through 4 revisions, and quite frankly, I'll support what he's presented today. I think it's reasonable. I understand the developer needs to turn a profit in what he's doing. Being in the construction-related trade myself, I understand there is concessions. If somebody wants to live in an area where they have no neighbors for 40 acres, then they should have bought 40 acres and built their house within the center of it. I understand that. So each one of us that buys property, we have a certain obligation to ourselves to do due diligence for what is around us and what could be around us. So to think that we're all going to wind up with 35,000 square foot lots in there, I think is somewhat foolish, to a point that it also backs up to city property that's allowed commercial development. Now, the philosophy of having a 3/4 acre lot backed up to, a power center, nobody's going to buy that house either. So there has to be some transition, and frankly, I think the developer's offered us that, and I think what he's offered is a good plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Is it Honest J Coffee?
That's correct.
Hi, my name's Onish J. Coffee. I live at 9623 West Cielo Grande. I'm approximately 3 blocks south of this new development in the county island. I've been out there for 21 years. When I would leave Thunderbird, I had two stop signs all the way to my house. I appreciate that. I love that. I moved out there for that, as everyone else did out here. We met with a developer back in October. After that meeting, I'll be honest with you, I was on an absolute witch hunt. Narrow, small lots, whole development, cookie cutter. I was pissed. Came back to us. We told them what we wanted. Came back to us. Increased the lot size. Took them to 3/4 acre lots. Narrowed them down to 1/2 acre lots. Buffered us out of that. Love that. Then we had a traffic issue. We didn't want the whole development going to Liberty High School and Park Ridge through our neighborhood, and we knew that's what was going to happen. It's bad enough now with our existing houses, let alone adding more. They took it, split it in half, exited the north half to Happy Valley, which is a 6-lane major arterial road, plenty of room for that traffic. Took the south half, exited over to 99th Avenue and south on 95th. Love that plan. Everything this developer has done is things that we've talked to him about through this process. I was very involved in this process, as several other people, because we were interested in our community and we wanted to maintain what we had out there, so we stay involved. We didn't just expect someone to come knock on our door. We went and knocked on their door and said, what are we doing here, and how can we help you get this thing going, and how can you help us maintain what we really want out here? The only thing that I may be a little bit concerned about, and I know through the city development and the engineers for planning and for flood control, is 97th Avenue does flood. I mean, it floods, and it's due to Morton Ranch. It was built out there. They just redirected water. And I know that the city's not going to allow this to happen. I know they'll make the engineers do the proper thing, maintain their own water on site, and that's really my major concern with this development. Other than that, they've done everything we've asked them to do, and I think it's a good development and it should proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. Carol Shaw.
Good evening. My name is Carol Shaw. I reside at 9029 West Hatfield Road in the city of Peoria, adjacent to this property that's under discussion. I've lived there 29 years and 5 months. I'm a longtime resident. Two concerns. We were initially county residents, and the city came in and said, we want to annex you. We're going to give you a park. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We were annexed in late 89, I believe. We still have no park. Our closest park is Park Ridge Park, 4.2 miles away. But more than that, we are an area of custom homes. We don't have cookie-cutter homes, the exception being this new Shea development at Cayaleos, 87th, Hatfield, 89th. Those are cookie-cutter homes. They looked exactly alike. They're huge homes on very small parcels of land. The other issue we have is water. We are not city water. We are Sunrise Water, and that will be what is serving this particular development. Our concern is we don't have adequate water pressure now, and you add 300 plus homes to that, what's going to happen to our water system? J.D. Campbell has been working with us and has assured us that, we have adequate water, but we just don't have the water pressure. As an example, 4th of July weekend, it was very hot. We were in the 115 range. I have horses, and I have a water spigot at the corner of my barn. I turned the water spigot on full force, and I could not get the water to even reach the 10-foot block wall adjacent to my neighbor's property. It took 12 minutes to fill my washing machine. You add 360 homes to our existing water system, we're going to have a problem. At the time the city was annexing us, back in the late 80s, early 90s, we were told our neighborhood was all going to stay as 1-acre lots. We were going to be the Scottsdale of the West Valley. It was going to be an equestrian community, it was going to be upscale, and it was. And now you're talking about bringing in extra people. The reason I have my face mask is because with the opening of Happy Valley Road, which didn't exist when I moved there, we now have an air quality issue, and I can't breathe. I can't sell my property because of the housing bust. So we're asking you to retain the existing zoning as it is, and to look not only at traffic issues, but to look at the water issues, and to look at the quality of life. We as equestrians can no longer access Sunrise Mountain trails. We can no longer access the Agua Fria River because of Lake Pleasant Parkway. We can no longer access Skunk Creek or New River because of all the developments that have gone on around us. And one thing that nobody has mentioned is whether you're in the city or the county, Happy Valley Road to Deer Valley Road, which is 2 miles, the old 99th Avenue to about 77th Avenue. There are no curbs, sidewalks, gutters. They are rural streets. They are not maintained. We have, on the street I live on, a simple, stupid PM10 overlay, a bunch of gravel with oil on top of it. That is our road, and we are city residents. We pay city taxes, yet we get nothing. So I ask you to seriously consider traffic, water, the lifestyle out there, and just in general, keep the zoning as it is. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Dolores Stock.
Good evening. I'm Dolores Stock, and I live at 9108 West Cully Lejos, and I have been a resident there for 23 years and 3 months. And we want to keep it as acre plus. We will go down to half acres, but we don't need the traffic and the craziness of the drivers. Everybody's worried about 95th, and I agree with them 100%. Because I have seen them fly through on Cully Lejos, coming over 91st. I've had a couple of accidents where the cars are in my yard. And when I am heading towards Lake Pleasant Parkway, I have actually seen them go right through the bus stops or the stop signs while a school bus is there picking children up. This is an accident waiting to happen. And if you think you're just going to put a stop sign, they go straight through, right to Lake Pleasant. It's not only the 95th Street School, the high school, but we have one also, a charter school over there on Lake Pleasant and Cully Lejos. And that's where they're racing to and racing home from. So please, think about it and get another way of getting in and out. Yes, we're a halfway mark, but we are definitely in danger of having an accident, and as it was said, we are dirt roads. We have nothing of sidewalks or curbs, and it's dangerous even walking our animals and the horses that are riding. And I thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate it. J.D. Campbell?
My name is J.D. Campbell. I live at 93445 North 77th Avenue. And I have just very little to add to what's been said. And no one that I know of has mentioned what is around this deal, and I don't have any way to show it. But these are all large lots. Acre and a quarter to a full acre, and a sprinkling of R18. And here he comes in, and Curly and I know him well. He wants to come in and want these lots to be smaller. Some of them R16. And I don't think that the area is ready for that because of what's been said, the traffic, and the size of the lots compared to what is up there now. And no one has brought this up. I'm bringing it up now. Around that development is all are these lots. Are none of them are R16. There is a little bit of R18, but very few of those. Most of them are acre or acre and a quarter. And so thank you very much.
Thank you. Jeff Schwartz? Oh. You're right, I did mispronounce it. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I know a Jeff Schwartz.
Okay. I'm Jeff Schultz. My address is 6315 West Rose Garden Lane in Glendale. I'm probably the furthest resident from this development, and I'm going to give two different approaches to this here. First being that my wife and I have been looking for a larger property and have had a real tough time trying to find one, and was watching this because we knew that it was zoned R135 and was really looking forward to that opening up as R135 sometime in the future. I'm not in the position to consider Melton Ranch. It's a little over my head, as was mentioned a little earlier, so my options have been somewhat limited. And if I was to consider what we have up on the screen right now, I wouldn't buy one of those R135s when I have just immediately across the street an R118. You don't want to be the big dog on the street, because your house is going to have less of a value because of who's across the street. I don't see that plan working as it is laid out right now. Next, my second approach to this is, fortunately, I will be closing on a property that is 3/8 of a mile south of the entrance, just off of 95th Ave. Next week, I'll be closing on a property. And that is ultimately what truly drew us here today. And we do not see this working with the area to the south. I am glad to at least see that it didn't go, that 95th didn't go through, because that county road has shoulders that come in and out. It's not a continuous road. It bumps in with dirt still there. It's obviously county and would not be in support of the development to the north. So I would not be in support of what is up there and has been presented today. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last speaker is Nancy Paganelli. Paganelli.
I'm the oldest person out there, I can tell right now, because I've been there 40 years as compared to some that were 26. I knew Mike when he was really a young guy. We fought many times over this zoning. I have been squeezed from all sides as you continually okay these, small area homes that are being built around us. I'm squeezed from the north, I'm squeezed from the south, the east, and the west. I am concerned about the continuous traffic. Last night I left my home on 87th and Camino de Oro and drove down Pinnacle Peak, and the cars were stacked on both sides of the road from 83rd Avenue almost to my street from the school. The new school that's gone in there. I don't know about how well you do your traffic searches, but when you keep adding all these different areas and you keep not realizing what kind of traffic we have. Pinnacle Peak is a 2-lane road, and right there at the corner, you've widened it for the school, but I'm telling you, did you see the traffic coming down there? Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So when you have that kind of traffic, and now you're putting in new areas, new traffic, believe me, people are going to find ways to avoid the traffic. They're going to come up the little roads in our county island. They're going to be, the horses have practically disappeared. There's a few areas still where kids can ride, and there's still people out there that own horses that ride. There's kids on bikes. There's our area, our lifestyle, our entire community there that used to be country lifestyle, it's just gone because you continually okay these small little areas. This is only one that you're talking about now. I've been to meetings with JD in the last couple of months. There's more little areas going up right around the whole area, off of 71st and Pinnacle Peak. It's just too much. Let well enough alone. Keep the acreage that we have and let these people who have acreage lots live the lifestyle we moved out there for. Like I said, 40 years out there, there were 40 homes. Now it's city. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I forgot one thing, and I still saw a few seconds. The other thing is the lights. We don't want street lights, and what you're going to do is you're going to have all these little communities around with, they've got to have street lights. There goes the sky. There goes all the country flavor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Would the applicant like to speak?
Ms. Chairwoman, I'll just try to address the points that were made in no particular order. Again, much of the comments about the street pattern, I just want to emphasize, we're going to be improving the adjacent streets. Right now, 97th Avenue on the west is a half street. 93rd Avenue is a half street. Calle Leos is a half street. We're going to be completing those streets, so there'll be full streets as a result of this development. 95th Avenue, we're going to be putting in the entire street. The drainage, Our engineer actually has worked on this property for a number of years. The drainage as a result of this development property, because we have to retain our own water, I know that you know this, but the drainage pattern, which basically goes from the northwest, from the northeast down to the southwest, is actually going to be improved because we're going to have to be retaining our water on the property, which right now just sheet flows to the southwest corner of the property. As I indicated beforehand, that was a topic of considerable concern, particularly with one of the neighbors who's in the back, Bob Stefanik, because he lives in the corner. We spent a lot of time going over the drainage problem, but the bottom line is with the development of this property, the drainage system is going to be improved. Mrs. Shaw raised the issue of water. We have done a water study with Sunrise. As she indicated, there is no problem with any water supply. The problem, to the extent that it exists, deals with the infrastructure, and as a result of the development of this property, we're going to have to improve JD's system by virtue of wells as well as storage capacity. So again, with the development of this property, the water situation is going to be improved, and there is zero problem with the water shortage. I don't doubt the sincerity of any of the speakers who spoke here tonight. I mean, I've talked to many of them, but I guess where I just differ philosophically is that the comments that are being made ignores a couple of things. It ignores the fact of the matter that this area has changed, and it's changed dramatically. Many of the subdivisions, I encounter this, and I've encountered it for decades, where subdivisions go out and they're sort of the trailblazers and the first ones out there, and as change comes around, it's sometimes a very difficult thing to happen, and it's not unique to this particular area of the valley. It happens everywhere in the valley, whether you're up in North Scottsdale, if you're out in Gilbert, you're out in Chandler. Change occurs, and when change occurs, good land planning and zoning, that's the reason why we have it here. The idea of why we have a rezoning process is to let analysis take place, and as areas change, do we just become anchored to a plan despite the change, despite the fact that Happy Valley has been widened so it's a parkway right now? These subdivisions were built before Lake Pleasant Parkway was even in, so you've had radical changes over the past 15 years. Lake Pleasant Parkway, Happy Valley, before 2 million square feet of retail was built, immediately contiguous to this particular site. And so again, I would maintain that the whole reason why we're here is to look at change and to see whether or not that dictates that there should be some sort of change in the land pattern. And I want to say something that I think the city doesn't get credit for, and that is that the city of Peoria, when you look at the development pattern, and when you look at the zoning pattern, you look at the general plan of this area of the valley, if you go from Deer Valley on the south up to Happy Valley, actually north of Happy Valley on the north, from Lake Pleasant Parkway to 67th Avenue, it's one of the largest expanses of large lot areas anywhere in the valley. You've got about 8 square miles of large lot. When I'm saying large lot, it's predominantly acre lots. There's 1 or 2 half-acre subdivisions in there. But for people to say that the city hasn't been respectful of this type of lifestyle is just plain wrong. You've got over 8 to 9 square miles of large lot subdivision. I think there's a place for alternative type of housing in an area, particularly in an area like this, which has changed so much. And if you can't provide for some alternative type of housing, particularly in an area like this, adjacent to Happy Valley, adjacent to Lake Pleasant, adjacent to 2 million square feet, then I don't think you can place it anywhere. You know, a couple of the speakers got up and they talked about how there's going to be cataclysmic changes to their lifestyles. I've heard that in every single zoning case that I've had in this area. Fletcher Farms or Fletcher Heights, when I zoned that back, whenever it was, 12, 13 years ago, this room was filled. It was filled. In fact, it was out the door, and people were convinced that with Fletcher Heights going in there, the whole area was going to change. That subdivision, that master plan, I think has turned out to be one of the best in the city. Same exact situation with West Wing, same exact thing with Pleasant Valley, same exact thing with Camino Lago. I think that those subdivisions prove that different types of lifestyle, just like Mr. Loper had said, different types of lot sizes doesn't mean that they're incompatible. The question is, are quality standards being required in connection with the master plan? And if the quality standards are being required and are being implemented, then there's complete compatibility between this type of development and the adjacent larger lot. And that's proven again by the master plans that I just talked about. I live in an area over in the Phoenix-Scottsdale border called Arcadia, which is between Camelback and Indian School, 44th Street to 68th Street. There literally there's a third of the northern property along Camelback is acre lots. Immediately south south of that, between Exeter and Lafayette, are half-acre lots, and then south of Lafayette are 6,000 and 8,000 and 10,000 square foot lots. It's retained its property values probably better than any other subdivision in the area, and it's because the lot sizes don't matter. What matters is the quality of the development. And I think when you look at this master plan approach that we've taken, when you have 30% of this development that's being dedicated to open space, when you have trails that are throughout the property that link in the property, and when you take into account that we're providing these large buffers along the perimeter so that like is facing like. In fact, one of the one woman who commented about the 35,000 square foot lots, there are actually smaller lots than 35,000 square foot on the south side of Calle Lejos, west of 95th Avenue, and also the development that is immediately to our west are smaller than what we're providing. We're providing larger lots there. And so how are you being impacted when you're providing like to like? And Gary, who had gotten up and who lived on 93rd Avenue and is saying he's going to be impacted, we don't have any connection to 93rd Avenue, where there's no street connection. We're improving 93rd Avenue, and yet when you look at that site plan, there's no street connection. And we had been asked to provide some access over there to try to disperse the traffic. We didn't want to disrupt or be disrespectful to the lifestyle of the people on the east side of 93rd Avenue. So if you're providing like type of development and like lot size and your traffic is being split up, I just don't see how we're being impacted. So I would just conclude by saying, in all the years that I've been doing work up in this area, every case is fraught with some opposition, particularly when you have older developments who are used to a certain way of lifestyle. I think the fact that this room isn't packed is somewhat of a testament to the fact that we have taken our time, we've gone through this process, we've made changes to try to be respectful, and as one of the speakers said, it's not perfect, it's not what my client, certainly what his expectations were when he came into this particular property, it's not maybe what the neighbors want, but I think that's the definition of compromise, and we think we've come up with a good plan, and we'd ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Do the commissioners have any questions?
By the way, I did speak to my client about Mr. Hutchison's comment about whether or not there's some. I frankly am sort of stymied how we do that, and I think the city attorney will probably tell you that it's probably illegal. But we certainly are willing to work with local tradesmen if there's a way of trying to invoke some sort of communication with local tradesmen. We would be delighted to do that. It'd be in our best interest.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Loper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is actually more of a question for staff. Going back to my comments on the previous case, I have concerns over connectivity. This differs because the north half has 2 access points, the south half has 2 access points. My druther would be to have that 95th Avenue connection, but I think I'd get lynched, so I'll leave that alone. Mm-hmm. But going back to the comments about the county roadway standards, we've seen this a lot over the last few years to the south and to the southwest of this, up and down Lake Pleasant Parkway, where you've had these 5 and 10 acre older subdivisions. Now you have new ones coming in. There's always this concern about old road standards that are in the county versus new road standards in the city. I know that the city cannot take over or take care or maintain county roadways, but is there a process, an improvement district or something that these folks could go to McDOT and try to get their roads improved? Is that anything anybody's explored? I'm just asking that of Sean and the city engineer, traffic engineer, if you're aware of anything that maybe throw out to them to talk to somebody about?
The county residents certainly can go to the county and ask for improvements. In fact, I know that the county is improving a couple of streets in the general area. So, and the trend is that eventually most of these islands will be annexed. I mean, that's probably something inevitable. But in the meantime, the city obviously requires the improvements that are made by the developers to match our standards, at least the half that we own. And, we work with the county too. We have had joint projects, but for the most part, city ends up doing or paying for these improvements because county as a whole doesn't seem to have much fund to improve it.
Thank you. You know, the comments about the area changing certainly are
Just like Mr. Commissioner Loper, can someone in the audience wants to speak? Can I do that?
That is at your discretion if you would like to take another speaker form.
Okay. Would you like to come up? Is it Mr. Hightower? And just to make a quick comment.
My comment's nothing more than to address the question that you posed about the improvement districts. A lot of the properties that are out there, there is no dedicated right-of-way that the county owns. We own the property. Therefore, we've actually paid to pave our own street. Therefore, if you go to try to get the neighbors to do an improvement district, they're already going to buck it. They're not willing to do it. They paid once to pave their street. Why would they pay for an improvement district that is going to be at an exorbitant cost to have that street built to the new standards of be it the county or the city? I hope that answers part of your question.
No, it absolutely does, because you're right, it has to be dedicated to the public. So in a lot of respects, you folks that live in those county islands with those private drives, you drive your own bus on those roadways. There's nothing the city could do, even if it was in the city. You know, I haven't lived in the area as long as some of the folks, but I remember, it doesn't seem that long ago when, to go to Prescott, where I have family, you'd take 91st Avenue, you'd do the sharp turn, take Happy Valley and Lake Pleasant and New River and on up. But the area's changed. As Mr. Curley and a number of other people have said, it's changed drastically. Regardless of what happens with this development, major commercial, 2 million square feet, 6-lane roadways, it's not what it once was. And if it was what it once was, we would probably see somebody coming forward with a project that reflected the lot sizes that are around it. But the fact of the matter is that it has changed, and there's a recognition of this. For these gentlemen to have stuck as long as they have in this land use plan certainly tells me that there's a market for this. And going back to my comment before, lot sizes in and of itself don't make or break the quality of a community. Somebody called those lots lower end. I live on one of those lower end lots. It's not lower end, and I kind of take umbrance of that, regardless of the character of regardless of the area of the city. But with that said, I think this is a great land use plan. You got a transition from uses that are adjacent to commercial. Maybe there's a market for acre lots next to commercial that back up to it. I don't know. I wouldn't want to invest that much money into an acre lot or a larger lot next to commercial. So it makes sense that you'd have smaller lots and you transition. What were there, 4 or 5 site plan iterations done on this, and a dozen or more different meetings of one type or another? I've been on the commission for almost 12 years now. I can't recall a project, and we've had some contentious ones up here, but I can't recall one that went through that many iterations, that many different iterations of a site plan, that many meetings. So I, for one, support the project, and I promise not to add a stipulation about 95th Avenue.
Thank you. Okay, any other, yes, Commissioner
A question I have, my understanding, I was taking notes here, and what I've come up with so far is that people are concerned about traffic, consistency with lot size or something that would be acceptable in lot size, and the other one had to do with the water issue at Sunrise. I think the water issue, the simple one, is probably going to be resolved because even the state land department is not going to allow something to go up if there isn't sufficient water. So there's not just the cities involved with that, but the state gets involved with subdivisions as well. So I think that's going to be resolved. Traffic, I think that'll get resolved as well, and it seems to me that the plan that's been presented has been well thought out and certainly has had a lot of input based on what Mr. Curley's had to say. In terms of lot sizes, I do sympathize with people saying that I drive by the smaller lots and the house sits on the lot and in the patio on the back side, they walk out and you bump your nose on the back fence once you step off the back patio pad. So you've got a 6,000 square foot house and you put up, or a lot, and a 4,250 square foot house goes up on it. It's a 2-story. My question would be, Are there any, this is to staff, are there any regulations that are, excuse me, that are out that say that minimum lot coverage, so that we do have, rather than just, you know, this 4,000 square foot house on a 6,000 square foot lot, to require something that is more consistent in terms of the appearance of larger lots by having the houses being somewhat less square footage and just maximizing everything right to the wall. So that the blending, as Mr. Loper had talked about, the blending of the lot size and the appearance of the aesthetics of the whole area transitions smoothly, rather than going from this R18 lot to the west or to the east, roughly an 8,000 square foot lot in that vicinity, to something that's 25% or so smaller than that, immediately just across the road. So the question is, what is the maximum, or what is the best way to look at lot usage in terms of the square foot of the improvements on it?
Commissioner Spraker, we do have maximum lot coverage requirements that are included in the planned area development. Those range from 50% lot coverage for the R16 product to 40% for the R135, which is relatively consistent with traditional zoning standards. That includes not only the livable square footage or the livable lot coverage, but also includes things such as garages, covered patios, accessory structures, anything under a roof. So that is your lot coverage calculation typically. So when you're looking at that, you can consider everything that's on that lot covered for the total lot coverage. And again, that is in keeping with our traditional zoning ordinance requirements.
You know, my concern is only that, not just for the people that live in the area, but so often when, and I used to develop, and so often, and I understand that where the developer's at and what the builders want to do and what have you, but so much of property, when we really pack it in, and I'm not against this plan, but when we pack it in and we maximize what we're going to put on the lots and so forth, and if we don't really control it somehow, and I don't know how to do that, we end up somewhere down the line with property that it looks like it's been stuffed into something, and I don't think that does the city any benefit. I don't think it does the neighborhoods any benefit. And I'm just, again, voicing an observation. And I'm not suggesting anything be changed here, but I would say at the same time, if I could just, you know, pull something out of the air, I'd like everybody to live on an acre. But I don't think in today's world and environment that fits. Just that I would like to hopefully see those curvilinear roads, and I would like to see where the lots are not just completely covered for the most part with the structures. And if that means that the builders are encouraged to not maximize everything for every lot, but rather consider some aesthetics other than just, again, maximization, that ought to be a consideration. But again, I'm not making any suggestions so much as making an observation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Commissioner Hutchinson? Okay. You know, I live out in that area, and I remember when they put up the stop sign, the stoplight at Lake Pleasant and Happy Valley, and I was so annoyed. And then after about 3 months, I thought, oh, good thing they had the stoplight. Your perceptions change after a while. And I remember driving out towards the 303, and I thought, boy, if I ever have 25 cars, if I ever pass 25 cars, I'm moving. And of course, now there's 25 cars that every time that light changes. So things change, and I certainly appreciate your lifestyle. But as Commissioner Loper said, if people wanted, and it was viable to have 1 acre lots out there, they would be. So anyway, with that, I'm going to close the public hearing. And do I have a motion? No. Now, remember, we're doing 2 motions. Is that correct?
These, yes, the
GPA
the
12
motion for GPA 12-005 needs to, and Z 12-005 need to be considered separately, yes. So you need two separate motions.
Okay, so the first motion will be on GPA 12-0005.
Madam Chair, first I'd like to say I will refrain from making the stipulation of a local worker provision in the recommendation, but I would encourage the developer to seek out help in making sure that residents of the city of Peoria end up on these projects, because right now it's not happening. With that, I will make a motion to approve the case number GPA 12-005.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Would you please vote? And it passes unanimously. Could I now have a motion on Z 12-005?
Madam Chair, I will make a motion to approve case number Z 12-0005.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Please vote. It passes unanimously. Before you all leave, I do want to thank you all for coming. You don't know how many times we sit in this room by ourselves. So thank you for coming in. Good night. Okay, and Chris, I know we have a couple of items still left.
Madam Chair, we have one more item. Maybe give it a couple minutes.
Okay, right, just let them clear out.
If you would just make a motion to have a recess, a temporary recess.
Madam Chair, I would move that we have a temporary 2-minute recess, or 5-minute recess.
Second.
Okay, quickly.
All in favor?
Go as fast as you can. Okay, thank you.
Chair, members of the Commission. It's been a long evening. I will try to make a brief presentation for the 6 text amendments that we are proposing. This is a public hearing for those amendments. I will, though, caution that it's very difficult to be brief when you're trying to talk about the zoning ordinance, but we will do our best. A couple of these items are more on the housekeeping side. I see there is a lot of text, and I'm going to try to sort of summarize, and we can kind of move through it because I'm sure you've all read the staff report as well, and so maybe you already have sort of an idea of where we're going with all of this. But a number of these are house cleaning items. I would say maybe 1 or 2 or some that have a little bit more in-depth sort of thought or discussion that might be involved, and maybe not. So I'm hoping that we've made it clear for you. The first is in our definitions section of the zoning ordinance, where we have a definition called non-chartered financial institutions, which are sort of those payday-related type of services. And currently, vehicle title loan, where it is considered that type of service, it is not in that definition at this point. And so, in order for clarity for when those types of businesses come into the city, we would like to add that to the definition of the non-chartered financial institutions. Now, along with that, what those kind of services are is they're called deferred presentment services. And so we felt it was important also to add that definition to the zoning ordinance in the event that, however the financial market or however businesses formulate, that we've captured this at any time that there might be sort of, again, the payday related type of use that comes to the city, we can say this is exactly where it may go in our commercial areas. So that's the first proposed amendment. The second is, amending our general provisions specifically with our walls. And what this looks to do is that currently when you come to build a site wall in the city of Peoria, if it is over 6 feet 8 inches, you're required to get a building permit. Building code today says you are required to have a permit. I can see Councilmember Loper understands this one. You are required to have a building permit. What we're trying to do is align the building code with the zoning ordinance so that, because a lot of times when developers come in, they don't understand why they need a building permit for a wall that's 6 feet 10 inches, for example. But bear in mind, this does then allow for 4-inch greater height in our site walls than we currently allow. This is the residential parking that will take a minute to sort of go through, and I would just hope that it comes across clearly. Currently, there's some concern about properties and where people are parking their cars. We've worked with code enforcement and have heard that this is a concern through a number of areas throughout the city. And we feel that the problem sort of stems from that the zoning ordinance isn't exactly clear as to what is a true driveway. And so we feel that these are valid concerns in the sense that they are safety as well as aesthetic issues. It has to do with things such as people parking maybe in an area that is not sort of logical and might create blind spots. And so in the end, we're trying to sort of resolve some of those issues. And we feel basically by doing that is to define what a legal driveway is. So rather than kind of going through all this text, we created this diagram, and I think it kind of captures sort of the main idea of what we're proposing. First has to do with talking about a prime orientation of how to park. I apologize. First, really what is important is defining what a driveway is, making it clear that it is this area in this part of your property, and it has these sort of characteristics. So that's one thing that we've proposed in the ordinance. But what's important in support of that is understanding the orientation of a driveway. And that way, we hope that there's an understanding, I think, logically, when you have a driveway, you're heading towards your garage. We're calling that the prime orientation. And what we're proposing is that cars must park in terms of that particular orientation. So you can see in the diagram, the car that's parked perpendicular to his parking lot would not be allowed according to the proposal. The second thing is looking at how much area you can actually have to park on. One thing it's important to note that we are still looking at a driveway being contiguous. However, what we're trying to also sort of allow for a little bit more legal driveway area, but but truly clearly defining it so that this is the area that you have based on the size of your lot. So it's a proportional type of proposal versus before it was based on lot size. So, and I think in concluding this, what's important also is that your legal driveway is where you can park. Anywhere else, you may not park. And, you know, I put up the label of a landscape front yard, and I know there's front yards that may be all gravel, they may be paved, and that's not what we're trying to regulate, but we're trying to tell you that you may not park in that area. And that was just the analysis for that diagram. We are also looking to just sort of tighten up the sign ordinance. In essence, what we're really talking about is there's sort of this ambiguous definition or ambiguous term called advertising copy. And really, as we regulate signage in the city, we're really not trying to regulate the message. We're just trying to say this is how much of an area you have in terms of your sign. So we're trying to get away from this idea of advertising copy and just calling it clearly sign copy. So when we talk about what you can have on a sign, it really is just saying you provide your message. Now, we do have certain signs that will tell you that you can only have certain kinds of information just based on the type of sign. But in general, we're looking at just trying to say, here's the area that you have, you know, you may provide the message that you're looking to provide. There's also just a minor proposal that looks at when we are extending a certain kind of sign permit, particularly with master plan developments and directional signs. Right now, it seems to have to come to all of you for an approval, and we're trying to sort of streamline that and make that more of an administrative process. Lastly, I have two administrative procedures that we're looking to amend. The first being, it's actually just a little bit, I think, of a hiccup in the ordinance at the moment. We have a process of administrative relief which allows for minor deviations from the development standards in the ordinance. And part of that, however, is if there's neighbors that may protest that proposal that a resident might be making, then it will go to the Board of Appeals. However, the issue in the ordinance today is that there's no notification that an application for administrative relief has been made. So while these things kind of happen and evolve through word of mouth, the city feels that obviously we need to make an effort and to actually notify when the application is in so people are aware and can fairly come in and discuss and understand what is going on and give them that opportunity if they do prefer to still move forward and protest so that it goes to a public process. And lastly, we are looking to add a procedure to this part of the section of the ordinance. We've come across in the recent past that we have zoning stipulations in place for zonings that may have occurred several years ago. And the idea is that those stipulations may not be relevant to today. And so we want to provide for a process for someone to come in or development to come in and say, hey, you know, this stipulation doesn't make sense anymore. We'd like to propose this stipulation. So we've added that to the ordinance. It is it does come before Planning Commission, or it will come before Planning Commission for recommendation and then go to City Council for approval. So it's not administrative, so it would come back to the governing bodies. With that said, we did provide the proper notice in terms of advertising the newspaper of this hearing, and you can see that, oh, this gentleman got that notice. We also did post the amendments, the proposed amendments on our website. We have not received any feedback on that. And lastly, we have worked with code enforcement, and I'm sorry I failed to mention that there is a city code amendment that ties into the parking amendment. It just kind of cleans up the language on both ends. So we're asking for you to recommend approval of this case to City Council. Thank you.
Is there any public comment?
Public comment? Okay. Close the hearing. And motion?
Madam Chair, Excellent summary, by the way.
Thank you.
I would move that we forward a favorable recommendation for TA 13-0002 as outlined in the staff report.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Second. Please vote. The vote's unanimous. Thank you. A call for the public. Would like to speak? Thank you.
Madam Chair, I will be brief. I know it's a late evening. I don't think we've had a meeting this late in years. I think that's correct. Just a few quick notices. First, welcome back from summer vacation. But if you haven't had a chance to meet our new executive assistant, I'd like you to point out Della Ernest is our new executive assistant. Yeah, her first meeting. She gets to attend a late meeting. But she's been with the city really since 2002, and most recently retained her from the Building Safety Department. So we're very happy to have Della on board, and welcome aboard. And then our second one, I just wanted to let you know we do have one vacancy right now on the Planning Commission with the departure of Commissioner Marr. So I was at the subcommittee the other day. They did make a recommendation for a new commissioner. That recommendation will go to council, and I would imagine in the next 4 weeks we will probably have a new commissioner seated on board. And then separately from that, you'll probably recall that at one time we had an alternate planning commissioner. We had 7 regular members and 1 alternate. And while that is still the structure we have in place, at one time there were some thoughts about, do we need that alternate position? The thinking was that, you know, when we have cases like this evening, you have pretty voluminous packets, it's a lot of information to go through, and that alternate person, while they can discuss the case and participate in the proceedings, they really can't vote. So the thought was, should we have the alternate position? I think our thinking has been modified. I think it's very important. I think we have you can have a lot of value from having that alternate person, you know, to help discuss the proceedings. We had a lot of great questions tonight. I think it helps to have an additional person, and particularly in some of those cases where we might need an extra person to help make a quorum or to supplement a smaller body that night. I think it's helpful. So we have asked the city clerk to fill that alternate position as well. And with that, the last item I have is that just a note that we do not have a meeting on September 5th. Go Devils. Absolutely. And I think on the 19th, Melissa, do you know if we have a meeting on the 19th? It'll be September 19th? We'll get back with you on that, but we won't have it on September 5th. Okay?
An observation. On page 5 of the staff report for Z13-0005, sentence number 1 talks about that the zoning case was date stamped September 17, 2013. And I don't think we're there yet.
They were looking ahead.
I think that's the case.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay, anything, Chris? Thank you. Then any reports from the Planning and Zoning Commission itself? Then I'd like to adjourn the meeting. Thank you.